Hello everyone. Today we will see how we can write a Spring Boot API in Java and test it out in a very short time, maybe somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes. So if you want to write a Spring Boot API, please ensure you should have Java and Maven installed in your local. There are so many videos on how to install Java and Maven. So I will share a few links in the description of the video so that you can do those things first and you can follow this video. And you should have an editor of your choice. It can be either Eclipse or IntelliJ. The free versions are available on the websites. If it is IntelliJ, you can always find that community version of the IntelliJ in the internet and download and use for free. Then that can be used for the purpose. So if you want to write an Spring Boot API, so first thing you have to do is you have to go to spring.io website, and then once you go there you will see their website. You can go there and then simply go to projects, and at the bottom you can see Spring Initializer is there, so just click it. And in the project side you can see it is in Gradle. You have to change it to Maven, and this is just fine. You can keep the version like this, and language is Java. So now you have to do is you have to go to dependencies. You have to add a dependency. So mainly we need minimum of Spring Web dependency. So search for Spring Web and you see the Spring Web is there. So just click it and you see in the right side it has been added. So you can build web including RESTful application using Spring MVC, and they use Apache Tomcat as the default embedded container. So that means the Tomcat server will run the application, and you can write RESTful APIs, REST API that we are trying to write in the Spring Boot. So for that, Spring Web is needed. So they have given the description there itself. So then you can give a name for your project. So I will just give some name. Let's say I'm going to write a project for let's say I'm just saying house for something called house. No, house is not a good thing. Let's say staff. Let's say staff. Okay, so something called staff, and name I can change any name you want. Okay, anyways, I will say staff. What can I say? Okay, let's see, staff management, something like that. Okay, so some random name you can give. That's totally fine. And when I do this, I will just give generate. Okay, once you generate, you will see there's a zip file has been downloaded in your downloads. So simply go there and you can find the zip file here. So just extract it here. So extract all and extract. So in the downloads you can find that folder, and staff is there. So that means the project that you have generated has been downloaded successfully. Now all you have to do is you have to open it using your editor. So I'll go to my IntelliJ. I'll go here and I will give open. Okay, then I'll go to my downloads and look for my staff project. So you can see the staff project over here. So I will go here and you can see a black mark here, right? So I will open it. So you have to do the same thing. Okay, so I will give Rust project and new window. So as soon as you have done it, you can see the project has been opened. So go to src main and Java, and there you can see com.example.staff, and you can see your name here, staff management application. Okay, so the name you gave was staff management, so the file became staff management application. So there is a relation here. So if you open it, you will see there's a main method, public static void main, that is going to run the application. Okay, so this is the basic structure of let's say Maven project for RESTful API. So simply you have to write routes. For example, write the routing that if someone type the URL along with some routes where it has to go. So such things and functionalities you have to write in the file in the project, and you can run it and you can up and see whether it is working or not. So for the sake, what I will do is I will open my terminal and I will build the project and try to see if the project can be run without any errors. So if you want to build a Maven project, you have to type mvn clean install. Then you will see whether it can be successfully built or not. So you can see the build is success. That means you have successfully compiled the project. It has been successfully built. So now what you have to do is you have to run the project. Okay. So to run it in my editor, you can see a run button here. So it can be different from editor to editor. You have to know where you can find a run button. So how you run a project in the editor. Okay. So also you can click this and run it because this is the main class, main method. So for the moment I will go like this. I will click the run here. So you can see here, it says started staff management application. Okay, that means it is successfully started and process running. It is running. So where can I find the running application is, there's one way. It is saying Tomcat started on port 8080 with the context path empty string. That means the application is running on port 8080. Okay, localhost 8080 in your local machine. Port 8080 the application is running. So what I will do is I will go to my browser. Okay, I will type localhost 8080. Okay, and you can see there's an error that says not found 404. That means something is there, but the whatever I'm looking for is not found. Okay, if the application is not running, you will find another error. For example, if I'm giving localhost, let's say 8081, okay, you are saying can't reach, refuse to connect. So if there's no application running, you should get this error. But for localhost 8080, we are getting a white label error that says 404. That means something is running here, right? My application is running successfully in 8080, but nothing is there. Status is 404. Nothing is found. Okay. So how I can add some data on my backend or on my server, on my application that can display here? That we will see in the next video. Okay, guys. Hello, everyone. So in the last video, we have seen our application is up and running, but nothing is displaying here. The reason for it is your application is running, but you shouldn't give it a root. For example, there's no functionality added. There is no API is running. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to simply add a path to the localhost 8080. So that means, for example, I'm saying, okay, if I have a stroke for the localhost 8080 and say staff, okay, I can add this path to my localhost and the whole URL should have a functionality. So what I'm trying to do is I'm adding this part appendix to my localhost 8080 and I can give a functionality to the appendix or to the whole. Then somebody tries the URL, the functionality should be coming in the browser. Something like that I'm going to do. Okay, that is what we call root. So I'm going to write a root, something for the root of staff. Okay, ROUT root staff, some functionality I'm going to write. Okay. To do that, what I need is I need a controller. Okay, so in the Spring we have a pattern called MVC, model view control pattern that we can study about later. Basically, you should know if you want to write a root or if you want to write some functionality, you have to have a controller package or class. So what I will do is I will first stop the application and simply I will create a new controller package. Okay, so what I will do is I will go here. Okay, and I will give right click and I'll give new package. Okay, here I will say controller. So we have a new package called controller. There I need to have a new controller class. So what I will do is I will give new Java class. I will say staff controller. So we have a new Java class called staff controller. Okay, you see the class has been created here. Okay, controller, staff controller. So what we are going to do is we are going to add an appendix called staff to my URL and I am going to have a functionality there. So that functionality and appendix, every details are going to be stored inside this controller basically. Okay, so what we normally do is we have annotations in Spring Boot. Okay, so we can tell that application that this is a controller class so that that application can come and look for the roots here. So what I will do is I will say at rest controller. Then you can see there is a suggestions coming that says REST controller. Okay, so this, what does this mean is this particular class is a REST controller class. That is what the annotation means. Okay, then what I will do is I need to write the root somewhere, right? So what I will do is I will write at get mapping. It's an annotation. Okay, and I will write the root here. So for me the root is / staff, right? Okay, if somebody types localhost 8080 and / staff, I want to write a functionality for that. So, and what I'm trying this get mapping is I want to get some data from the server and display in the URL. Okay, that means the direction is starting from the server or application going to the URL or going to the UI, not the other way around, starting from the UI and going to the server. No, that is post scenario that we are not going to look at now. Now what we are going to do is we are going to get some data and display in the UI. Okay, so for that purpose we will study get mapping we'll use. So for this annotation we have to write a functionality, right? So how we do is we write a method here. So I say public, okay, and let's say a string. Let's return a string for now. Okay, string, and that says let's write a method called get staff. Okay, so I'm going to give some hard-coded value here. So it's just a method and that is being annotated. That's all. I have a method that is being annotated here by a get mapping, and this is a string method, so the method has to return a string data here. So I will return some random string. So I will say return some random keyword, let's say staff staff with, I'm saying some number, let's say 8989, and phone 476990999. Okay, so it's just some random string I'm returning. So according to our logic, what should happen is the root should come and first find the controller and come and see this root here. So staff, the root is here. It's a get mapping, so we have to get some data from here to the UI, and then we are seeing, okay, this is a method that returns a string value. So what is the return string value? This value. So this value should be returned from the application and should be displayed when we try this root. You got it? So that is the logic. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build it again. So as I said in earlier, I'm going to clear this. I'm going to write mvn clean install. So that means the build is successful. So basically what we have done is we have wrote a simple single API. So this is called an API because it can using this root we can access the functionality. So this is basically an API. Okay, so I have built the API successfully. I have wrote a simple API that can return a string, and I have built it successfully. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to run the API and I'm going to try whether the root is working or not. So as we all know, how we can run is we will go here and we will simply run this. So you can see the application has been started. It says started staff management application and it is running, and again it is in port 8080, but we have a controller here that has an API called staff. Okay, so what I will do is I will simply go here and I will refresh the 8080 and I'm still getting the same error. Okay, why? Because still I didn't go to my functionality. So how I can go to my functionality is I have the root here, right? It should come as an appendix to the existing URL. So what I should do is I will go to my URL again and I will type /n staff. So this is my appendix. So as soon as I type, you can see we are seeing a string here. So this is the same string. This is the same string I was trying to provide here. You see, staff with number 8989. So just for our satisfaction, what I will do is I will just remove the later part of this string and I will again run it so that we can see whether it really works. Let's see, I will give the number of 1000 now. I stop it and I will rebuild it. So the build is success here, right? So now I will again run, but this time I have changed the string to staff with 1000, right? So I will run the application now. So the application is up and running, nothing is wrong. So I will go to the URL and I will refresh it, and you see staff with number 1000 is being printed. That means our route is correctly being routed to our API that we wrote, that is inside the controller. The functionality is being accessed successfully. So actually we are randomly returning a string, but in future we will see how we can develop this API further to build it to a proper model based object oriented API. Thanks. Hello everyone. So we have seen how to return a string when we are trying to route a functionality, route our URL to a functionality. We have seen how we can create return a string value. So however, like logically our URL is routing to staff, right? So I mean logically we should actually return a staff object. So for that we have to create a new staff object. To create a new staff object, we need to create a new staff class. So let's create a new staff class, and with that we will create a new object of the staff, and let's return it so that the code makes more sense. So when it comes to creating a staff object, you may see we have talked about the model view controller, MVC. So you now have some idea what a controller is. So we always, we have written our code, that route functionality of our code inside a controller, right? So you have some idea. So now let's see what a model is, because let's say we have to create a staff class for creating a staff object to be used in the controller or to be used in the code. So any object like that is called a model. Okay, so now we are going to talking about model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a staff class and obviously a staff object as well. So the staff class will be a model. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I will create a model package here, new package and model, and inside that sorry, I'm going to create a new class called staff, and the object of the class I'm going to return in the controller, right? In the route I'm going to return a staff. So let's add some fields in the staff class. So let me have the staff name, private string staff name, and then staff ID maybe, and maybe age, and let's create a constructor to assign this value during the object creation of the staff. So I will write a constructor public staff So I hope in basic Java you are aware of creating constructors. Then we have to say this dot, oh my god, this dot staff name is equal to staff name, same as staff ID age. So I have created a constructor. So using this constructor we can create staff objects. And also another important thing is we have to create getters and setters for these three fields. So that means get staff name and set staff name, get staff ID, set staff ID, and get age and set age. So in IntelliJ there's a shortcut to do it. You right click over here and click on generate, and there you can see getter and setter. You can give, and you select all the fields and you say okay. So you can see the getter setters methods for each and every field, has been created. So we have 3 fields, so we have six methods. Okay, so I'll copy these field names and I will add that on top. Okay, all good. So please note, even though we are not going to use these getters and setters methods, it is important to have these methods. So because at least having getters are important, otherwise we will have an error. So that we will see later. For the moment, just we have to create these methods. So you can have a look what is inside the method, or if you have any idea, okay, how to write getters and setters, you can write it by yourself. If you don't know, if you are using another ID and you can't find this generate option, you can write these getters and setters by yourselves if you know a little bit of Java programming knowledge. So all good for now. So what I will do is, since I have created a new staff class with 3 fields and a constructor and also some getters and setters. So I will paste the constructor also on top, so it is easy to read. So I will have it here. Okay, so variables, constructor and getters and setter methods. So now I will go to the staff controller class. So I'm going to, instead of a string, now I'm going to create a staff object and return it. So I will give staff here. Okay, and if it gives you an error, I will import the class. Normally it should automatically find the class, so nothing to worry. So I'm returning a staff object. So what I will do is I will create a new staff object and return it. Okay. So I will say staff. What is this? I will say, okay, staff is equal to new staff. If you could remember, we have to pass 3 parameters. First thing is the staff name. So I will give some name like, let's say Harry. And I will give a staff ID next. So that may be 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4. And age maybe 25. Okay. So I have created a new staff object. Okay, is anything wrong? And now I'm going to return the object here. Okay, so okay, there's something wrong. Let me check. So okay, staff ID should be an integer. It's my mistake. int, and age should be integer. So only the staff name is string. So that's fine. So here also I need to change it. So it was my mistake. Okay. So and these getter setters also should be changed. So what I will do is I will remove the existing getter setters and I will create a new one. Okay. So I will give generate getter and setter and all these 3. So it's my mistake. So now everything is fine. So I'll go to my controller class. Now there's no errors because first one is string, then the staff IDs and age are integer. Okay, now I'm returning the staff. So now it should actually return the staff to the UI, right? When we are hitting the route. So I'm going to build the application first. So the build is success. So let's run it and see. So running it. Okay, now it's successfully running and in port 8080 and it has started successfully. So I will go and hit that and see. I'll go and hit this staff endpoint and see whether we can get this particular data, name Harry 1, 2, 3, 4, staff ID and age 25, whether we can see this particular object. We will check. So I will go to my UI. Okay, and I'll hit it. You see, we are seeing staff name Harry, staff ID 1, 2, 3, 4 and age 25. So what I will do is I will copy this and I will paste it in a new tab and again check it here from the beginning. Okay, so you can see it is coming as expected. Harry 1, 2, 3, 4 and 25. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen how we can return a staff object using our route staff. So it is returning a single staff object in a actually the format that you are seeing in the UI was a JSON format with these details, right? Username and staff ID and age. So I was telling we should have this getter setters class method, especially at least in the setter getter method in the staff class, because if you don't give the setter methods in the UI, the system cannot be able to access the name, ID and age. Okay, that will give an error. So since now you have followed all the steps, now you also should get the same correct output as I have shown in the previous video. The name, ID and age, everything should be displayed. So let's keep it aside, and now let's try to write another route, okay, another endpoint. Let's say in this endpoint we just had a functionality of returning one staff object. So let's say what if the user wants to see all the staffs? Let's say there are 2 or 3 staffs. So let's write another route that can return a list of all the staffs. Okay, so what you can do is you have to do the same thing, right? I mean, somewhat similar thing. So you don't have to write a new controller. You can use the same controller class with another root. So how we can do it is, let's say I'm going to use the same get mapping annotation. So I will write another method for that. So first I will say get mapping, and this time we will add the root as let's say staffs in plural. Okay, that's good, right? So I need to have this value here. Okay, now I will write a method. Here we have to have multiple staffs, right? So let's create a list of staffs. So I will return a list of staffs. Okay, so I have to write the return type here. So it is not a single staff, it's a list of staff. So I have to import the list class. Okay, and the method name, let's say get staffs, so it should be multiple. Okay, and then obviously I will have to go like this. Okay, so now as you see this annotation, okay, this route staffs, the plural one, is now connected to this functionality. So we have created an annotation with this new functionality, like how we did in this first route. Okay, so now I'm going to return a list of staff, let's say members. So for that, first I'm creating a new list inside this method. Okay, list of staff. So I hope you are aware of how to use collections and list in the basic Java. Okay, so staffs is equal to new. Let's create a new array list of staffs. Okay. Okay, now we have created a list, but it is an empty list. There is no data inside it, right? So because it's a new array list, there's nothing inside. So we have to create a few new staff objects, and we are going to add into that array list, and then we are going to return the array list so that you can see all the staff members. Okay, so what I will do is I will create a first staff, and let's say staff 1. Okay, new, or let's say staff. Okay, let's pass the names. Let's say let's have Harry also as a staff. Okay, Harry, and staff ID 1 2 3 4 and 25. Okay, and let's create another staff like that, staff, and let's call him staff 2, and we'll have new staff. Okay, let's name him as, let's say, Jack, and let's give him an ID 4444, and the age, let's say 32 maybe. Okay, and let's add another staff 3, and another new staff, and let's name it as Peter, maybe Peter, and Peter can have maybe 5555 as his ID, and age is, let's say, 23. Okay, so we have created three new staffs, and we already have a array list. So now I'm going to add all the 3 staffs into this list, and I'm going to return the list basically. So staffs.add, so you know how to add employees staffs to the data to the array. So staff.add staff 1. Okay, likewise I'm going to add the staff 2, staffs.add staff 2, and staffs.add staff 3. Okay, so since there are other ways to add all the staffs together, but for easy to understand, I'm adding it one by one. So for the moment we have added sorry, all the staffs into the staffs array, and now I'm going to return this particular staff array. Return staffs. That means creating a new array list or new list, and creating new staffs, 3 new staffs, and adding them one by one into the list, and simply returning the list. Okay, so now if I go to this route, this should return 1 staff, Harry. And if I go to this route, staffs, it should return as 3 staffs list. Okay, and this is also a get mapping because we are trying to get some data to our UI basically. So it should be a get mapping annotation. So the same annotation, nothing to worry, same controller class within. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the application again. So it is always mbn clean install, mbn clean install. Build is successful, so I'm going to run it now. Okay, so it is running in 8080 and it has successfully started. Okay, so I'm going to my UI, and first let's check the staff route. Okay, so I'm going to type localhost 8080 and staff, and you can see Harry 1 2 3 4 25 is there, so the 1%. So that basically means it has hit this route. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the other one, staffs. Okay, so what I will do is I will have to paste have this route in the UI. So maybe I will make it as staffs now. I will add an S extra. So it is staffs now. And let's see. Now you see we have the list of all the staffs. See Harry, Jack, and Peter. You can verify the ID and age also correct. And it is a list, so it looks like an array here. You can see there's an array symbol at the start and the end. So that is how we do things. So if you want, I can take it in 2 different tabs. So this is staff. Okay, I'll bring it here. This is staff, 1 staff endpoint. This is staff's endpoint. So this is how we basically write multiple endpoints or multiple APIs in one controller class, and we can do whatever we want to do using a different routes. We can simply mention it, guys. So I can, if you want, I can shorten the scenario even more. So what I can do is, instead of adding all the staffs one by one, we can add everything together. So what I can do is I will remove it for now, and I can say staffs dot, there's something called add dole, and I can pass all the 3 staffs in one moment. Okay, I can say staff 1, staff 2, and staff 3. Okay, there's something wrong. So maybe no, here I can't do like that, because if I want to add dole, I have to have another array. So that's my mistake. So for now, let's have the previous way itself. So just ignore it, that guys. Okay, let's have it the same way. So I will catch you up in the next. Hello everyone. So we now know to have 2 get routes. That means 2 routes with get mapping to get data, and one is a single staff object, and another one is a list of, or let's say collection of staff objects. So basically you know how to write an API now and how to call it in your URL, right? So now if you, let's say if you want to collect some data from the system, from the application, the UI get mapping will work. So let's say you are going to put some data to the application, you are going to add some data. Let's say you are going to create a new staff object in your UI. You are going to send a new staff object that has to be stored in the inside this array in the application. So what does this mean is you are trying to post something, not getting but posting. So for that we cannot use get mapping, we need post mapping. Or let's say you are going to modify some data in the application using from your user side. So for that we need put mapping, or let's say put mapping, that means updating something. So let's say you are going to delete some existing data using your user interface that is existing in the code. So for that, you may need a delete mapping scenario. So there are many things are there, but using an usual URL, okay, let's say something like this. This you cannot do everything. You can do get, but you cannot do everything, okay? Because get means you just send the URL and you get the data here. So for further studying or to understand, do further scenarios like updating the data or posting the data, we may need some other tools. Okay, so let's learn to use something called Postman. Using that, you can do actually many things. Okay, so here let's search for Postman, and you will see this application, right? So here, if you click download Postman, you can download the software, okay, and simply install it. Okay, there are a number of videos to download and use the Postman. I can share one in my description as well, so I don't get into that. So as soon as you download and install Postman, you will get an interface something like this. Okay, this is a free version, something like this. Okay, so what I want you to do is, so once you go here, you can ignore whatever is existing here. So once you go here, you will get you will have to click this new button, and there you have to select an HTTP here. Okay, so click the HTTP, and here you can find number of options: get, post, put, patch, delete, head, and all. So as I said, you can use post, put, delete, and everything. So for the moment, we will try our existing URLs with the Postman, right? So what we have is a get method. So what we are going to we are having in our backend is basically a get method, right? Both are get. So what we have to do is we have to open our Postman, and we have to select get out of this, and we simply have to paste our URL here. So our URL is none other than this. So let me type it. Even though I used it already, it is showing there, but let me type it. Okay, the URL is here. So let's see if my application is running now. Okay, let me run the application first so that I can hit it. So now the application is running. Okay, so let's check it with the UI first. So in the UI, you are getting a single staff and also multiple staffs, right? So let's do the same thing with the UI Postman. So now we have staff URL here with the get method. So since we are hitting the get method, we have to mention it here, right? So if you hit the staff, you are seeing the same data is coming here in the Postman as well as how you get in the UI, the same way it is coming in the Postman here. Okay, so if you're going to get all that other data, let's say the list of staffs, okay, simply you have to edit this, or you can create a new one for that. So I will first copy this URL, okay, and I will create a new HTTP request, and that is also a get one, and I will paste that this here, and I will make it staffs. Okay, so I have two windows. This is for single staff, and this is for multiple staffs. And if I hit it, I will get all the staffs data here, right? The array of the data. So the same thing I got in the UI using the browser. The same way we can get the data in the Postman as well here. See, the outcome is coming as we expected. We have all these three staffs, right? So if you want to edit now, modify, or if you want to write a delete endpoint, delete API, if you want to write a post API, now you can write in your application, and you can use Postman to test those endpoints. So so the Postman gives you more opportunities than the UI, while this rather than this browser, while the browser is giving you a chance to get data and see, and the Postman is giving you the chance to do more things like put, delete, and everything. Okay, so yeah, that's all for now. So if you're able to up and running the Postman, that's good for now. We can see how we can write another endpoint for, let's say, deleting or posting something, and we can test that now. From today onwards we can test that using Postman instead of URLs or browsers. So only for get mapping we can use browsers. For other things like post, put, or delete, we will simply use our Postman. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen how to create the staff model classes and how we can return the staff and staff list, and also we have seen how we can use Postman for the same purpose as we one second. Okay. how we can use postman sorry, for the same purpose as we do in the let's say um, browser. Okay, same thing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm thinking of doing another thing, because we have seen okay, how to do a get scenario, right, using the object, and how we can route a URL to a get scenario, and we can return the object. We can do a get scenario. So now what I'm trying to do is what if we could do something like this. For example, let's say this array list has some data, right? So what if we have a delete scenario? What if we send a URL with the staff ID? Okay, that should go to a particular routes in a functionality, and the functionality where what we have to do is sorry, using the staff ID, what if we delete the particular staff from the list? Okay, a delete scenario. Okay, so to do this we cannot do it with the browser. We need postman. So we have seen how to use postman for get scenario. Now we need to know how to do it for the delete scenario. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to first, for our scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this array list outside of the method, and I'm going to make it a global variable. Because if I want to delete something from the array list, I'm going to write a new route and a new method for the same functionality, for the functionality inside this controller. So that method should be able to access this array, right? Because it has to delete some element from the array sorry, using the staff ID. So the array should be a global variable. So what I will do is I will cut it, okay, and I will make it a global variable. Okay, let's have it here. Okay, then these values that has been added, let me add in the array in the scenario as well. I mean, in this first step as well, I will add the arrays. When I'm initializing the array, there itself I will add the elements as well. Okay, instead of adding them inside the get staffs. So let's keep the get staffs only just for returning the staffs values. Okay, so there's a way to add these elements, the three staffs inside the array list staffs in the first initialization itself. Okay, declaration, it's in this same line we can do it. So how we can do it is, let's say list dot off. Okay, you can use list dot off, and you can pass all the objects. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just passing this objects. That means an object and a list of all these three objects are being created. Okay, so and comma this. Okay, so so what I can do is I'll type enter so that you can see it together. So a list, new array list of staff will be created with containing the list of these three objects. Okay, sorry, you can study a little more about the list of method and how you can initialize an array or list while during the declaration itself. Okay, you can study more on collections if you want. So what we have done here, okay, creating three new objects and adding them one by one inside the method. Here we are doing it outside while declaring the array creating the list is created here, and then this all three objects are being added at the same line. So an array will three objects will be created in the very in this line itself. Okay, so we can remove everything from here. So now the get staffs method will obviously have gets its own logical meaning, because get staffs mean you are supposed to return the staffs, not that you are going to add staffs inside. Okay, so simply this get staffs method will return the staff staffs list where already three elements are there. Okay, it will simply return the staffs, the same functionality, but we have taken the elements adding scenario of the array outside of these methodologies as a global one, because we are going to write a delete scenario that is going to affect the same list. So better it should be outside, right? A global variable. Okay. I hope you got it. Okay, that is fine. So now what I'm going to do is the user is going to pass a new pass staff ID. Okay, because we know inside staff we have staff ID, right? You got it. User is going to pass a staff ID. Using the staff ID, we are going to delete the particular staff from this array list. Okay, so what I will do is I will first write, if you want to delete something, you have to write delete mapping. Okay, and you have to route, always you have to create a URL to route. Okay, so what is our route URL is, let me have something like let's say delete / delete, and I need to pass a variable, right? A staff ID. So how we can pass it? I'm going to pass it as a path parameter. Okay, so how I'm going to do is, I need to open I need two curly braces, and within that I will say I'm going to pass a path parameter that will be called as staff ID. Okay, I can give any name here, that doesn't matter. Okay, then I will say public, I'm going to delete, right? Void delete staff. Okay, and there I need to say I'm going to pass a path variable. Okay, so what I will do is, we have to say, use another annotation called path variable. So you see there's something called path variable, right? So give that annotation and say our path variable is going to be an integer, right? It's a staff ID. So I will say int, then I have to pass the same name I am saying here, staff ID. Okay, so what does it mean is, please, the method will know what is the instruction is. That means please check the URL and look for a variable called staff ID. There's a path variable with the name of staff ID will be there. Okay, so this method will check here, okay, whatever comes after delete will be the path variable, and that will be an int, so that it can take and process it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a for loop to make the scenario happen. So what I will do is I will say for staffs. Okay, that means I'm looping the staffs array, which is here, and I'm going to take each and every staff element. Okay, so I hope you are aware of this enhanced for loop. Okay, so then I'm going to check for whichever the staff, the same staff ID is same, I'm going to remove the staff from this list. Okay, so I will do is if I write an if condition, if staff dot get staff ID, right? Get staff ID. So for this particular object, if the staff ID is equal to our staff ID, that is being passed as a path parameter, path variable. Okay. Okay. For any object, their staff ID is equal to the staff ID we are passing inside the method, please remove the object from the list. Okay, so I will say staffs dot remove this particular staff. Okay, you got it. So basically that's all we have to do. It's a simply and enhanced for loop, nothing but that. Okay, so then what we can do is, if you want to verify, we can again call this get staff method and see whether the element is removed or not. You got it. So for example, if I am passing, let's say number 4 for Jax, then as a staff ID here, so 4444, then that particular staff ID staff element should be removed from the list. Then if I hit this get staffs again, it should give only 2 elements, Harry and Peter, not Jax. Hope you understand it. So I will save that. I will build it first. Now the build is successful. So what I will do is I will run this application. So the application is up and running. Okay, so what I will do is I will use the postman to retrieve the data. So this is staff's endpoint to get the data. So I'm going to get the data now. You see, we are getting all the three datas, right? Harry, Jax, and Peter. Okay. So one thing is, from now on I will be mostly using postman because browser is not enough for delete or other scenarios. It is only enough for get scenarios. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to create a delete and call the delete method and remove this number 4444 Jax data. Okay. So how to do is create new HTTP, and I got this one. So I will select delete here, and I will say okay, HTTP localhost 8080, and what is my appendix? My appendix is delete and the staff ID. So I will type delete, and let's go for 4444. Okay, so it's a delete endpoint and with the staff ID as we have mentioned. So here, if you read this endpoint, you will know it should be supposed to routed to this delete mapping endpoint because it's a delete and the URL is also correct. The staff ID value is 4444. So then the 4444 will be taken here and analyzed with the looping scenarios. It will choose the correct staff with the same staff ID, and it will remove it from the list. Okay, so let me hit it here. Okay, this, I mean the status is 200. That means a success scenario. That means the functionality has been successful. So how I can verify the number 444 has been removed? So 444 is none other than this staff Jax. So his data should be removed now, right? So what I will do is I will use postman to go for a get call to see all the existing staffs. Now this guy should have been removed, right? So I'll go for the call now, and you can see he has been removed. We only have two people, that is 1234 and 5555. So if I want to remove 123 for the Harry also, let me try that as well. So I will copy his staff ID. I will again go for delete and try to delete his value by pasting it here. So I will send it again. It's a 200 success. So I will again go to the get method and try to see whether he has been removed. So I will click send, and you can see Harry also has been removed. Peter is only available there. So this is how we can verify and check and create a delete endpoint, and we can delete the data using postman. So if you want to get the existing data using a browser, you can again do, because get is always possible with the browser, right? So you can see even in the browser, if you go for all this staff's data, you can see only Peter as how it is in the postman. But if you want to do delete or other operations, you must need postman or some other tools. Browser is not enough. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen how we can do this delete mapping. So using postman, what we have done is in this existing array we just try to delete a particular element or particular member or particular staff using the staff ID, right? So we knew that we need a tool like postman for that, because our browser is not enough for delete scenario. So you understood how we can do it, and we have done it with postman, right? So if you are not aware of that, please go watch the last video and come back to this video. So in this video, what we are going to do is, like, okay, let's say here we are getting a single staff by hard coding for our learning purposes. Then here in the second get mapping, we are returning the staff list of staffs that has been defined at the start of the initial state of the program. So in the third scenario, delete mapping endpoint or delete mapping API, what we are doing is we are taking a staff ID as a path variable, and we are using the staff ID, we are removing the particular staff from this list of staffs. Okay, so today we will add one more endpoint to add staff. That means to this existing let's say list, we are going to add the new staff. So what we are going to do is we are going to have another endpoint for that. The user is going to pass a staff data. That particular staff is going to be added into the staffs list. Then using this get mapping, we will read the current staff list and see whether the new staff has been successfully added or not. So what I will do is I'm going to write a new endpoint, and I'm going to use a annotation first. So for this, if you want to add the data, we always have to use something called post mapping. So this is called post mapping. That means I'm trying to post a data to the system. So again, here we have value, and let's have a value of, let's say, okay, I'm sorry. Let's say insert, and I need to have a front / also for that. Okay, then what I do is I will say public void, and I will say add staff. Okay, then what we are going to do is the user is going to send a staff object, right, through the request, because how we can add the staff from the UI or from wherever you are, we are going to, that means the user interface, we are going to, for us that is Postman. Now from that user interface or Postman, we are going to send a staff object, and the staff object is going to be stored in the list of staffs. So inside the method, we are going to say a staff object is going to come from the user, add it to the staffs list, like that we are going to say. So how we are going to do is we are going to have an add, and we are going to say request body. Okay, that means with the user's call, API call hit, there will be a request body coming towards you. That will be a staff object. So we will say then staff, and we will give a name for the data. So simply saying this is the data type, and this is the method parameter name. So this is the method parameter name and data type and name, but we are annotating it with add request body. That means we will know with the request we will get this particular object. Okay, so once the particular object is coming with the request, we need to add it into the staffs array. So how to do it? Staffs dot add, and you will add this staff. Okay, copy and paste. So that's all, right? So basically when we are going to hit the call, user call or API call, we have to send a request body that has the staff data of a particular one staff object, single object, and that object will be added into the staffs list. So once it is done, we will try to call this get staffs method using this route, and we will see whether inside the final list that particular staff has been added or not. Okay, so what I will do is I will build the application first. So the build is successful. So and I will run it now. So the application is up and running. Tomcat started on port 8080 and started the application. Okay. So what I will do is first I will open my Postman and I will simply go to my get call, get all the staffs, right? Call, and I will send a request. Okay. And I'm seeing 3 data. First data, second data, and third data. So 3 because when we are initializing the staffs list, we are hard codingly sent 3. We are hard coding 3 objects, right? So now what we are going to do is we are using our post mapping methodology, or that new functionality. We are going to add one more staff to this list. Okay. So first what I will do is I will create a new collection. New endpoint. So how I'm going to do it is I'm going to click new HTTP, and it is our scenario is a post, right? It's a post mapping, right? So what I have to do is I have to, here in the drop down, I have to select post. Okay, and our URL is as usual HTTP localhost 8080, and here I have to add my route. Okay, let me go and see it. So my route is /insert. Okay, so I will type /insert. Okay, now there's a problem. What it is? In contrast to other methodologies or other routes, here we need a request body, right? Why? Because this method is expecting a body from the user, a data from the user. We have to send it. Okay, So how to send it? Let me show you how to do it. Okay, here you can see an option called body, right? So click it. Okay, and click row here, RAW, and the format comes as JSON. Okay, you can select different formats, but for the moment go for JSON format. Okay, here you have to send the staff data. So how we can send this? First we will go to our get method and see the existing staff data. There are 3 staff data available, right? So we will take one from here and we will modify it. Okay, so let's take Harry's data from the starting and the end with all the 3 fields. So copy it and come to your post method. In the body row, paste it, and now change the values. Okay, so let's change the name as, let's say, Rose. Okay, and ID, let's say 7777, and age, let's say 28. Okay, so there's a new staff now we have called name Rose, staff ID 7777, and age 28. Okay, so since this is the same structure of what we have got from the get method, there may not be any mistakes on this structure. Okay, so this should work. So we have a body now that can be taken as a parameter inside the method. Okay, so I'm going to send the data and I'm getting a status 200. Okay, that means success. So it must have been sent by now. So how I can verify whether this has been successfully posted inside the staffs list? I have a method called, I have an endpoint for that, right? Get endpoint for getting all the staff's data. So I will call it again and see whether Rose has been added to the list. Now let's see that. You can obviously see the Rose has been added to the list as the last member. So we have Harry, Jax, Peter, and now Rose also came. Staff name Rose, staff ID 7777, and age 28. That means the scenario has worked successfully. The request body staff has been accepted with the object of our Rose, right? And it has been added into the list. That's all, guys. I will meet. Hello everyone. In the last video we have seen how you can post an object, a staff object, using a post mapping through Postman, and how you can access that particular the final list where successfully the staff object has been added. Okay, so we are good with that. So now, since the user is now able to add a staff object into the list, and he's able to watch or see the final list, and also he is capable of deleting it by himself using the staff ID. Now I'm willing to remove the hard-coded staff values from the list. You're getting? So let's remove the pre-added 3 staff values, and let's keep the list as empty list at the initial state, and let the user add any number of staffs he wants to add, and then he will be able to see the staffs and he will be able to delete them. That makes a lot of sense, right? So what I will do is I will simply remove these parts, and initially now it is a new array list, right, of staff. So it's an empty array list now, nothing is added. Now when you call this get mapping method to access all the staffs, what we will get the whole we will get an empty list, right? Obviously, if the user needs to insert a staff, he can use this insert route with the request body, and if he wants to delete something, he can still delete it. Okay, and also I'm deleting the first endpoint because it is returning a hard-coded new staff, right? So it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I'm removing it because all we need is a staffs array, and where we can add a new staff, and we can access the existing staffs, and also we can delete an existing staff. So the first one is not needed because we used the first methodology just to understand the API scenarios. So I'm removing that as well. Okay, so now we have one get mapping to see the existing staffs, one delete mapping to delete any existing staff using staff ID, and to have a post mapping to insert a new staff into the staffs list. Simple as that. 3 routes, 3 functionality. That means basically 3 APIs we have inside our controller. Okay, so now I'm going to up this application after building it. So the build is successful and I'm going to run it. So the application is up and running because we can see the Tomcat started on 8080 and the application also started, right? So now I will open my Postman. Okay, and before I click the get staffs, because it is supposed to give an empty list, right? Get staff, I want to take a staff. I'm going to store a staff data, particular staff data. I'm going to copy because if I'm going to post it, I need a structure properly. So I'm going to copy this staff data or staff JSON, or in other words, the JSON format of the staff object I'm going to copy. And I'm pasting it here. Okay, because I need this to add new staffs. Okay, now I will hit this call to see existing staffs. It should be an empty array because now I have changed the code by removing the hard coded staffs. So you see, you are getting an empty array. There is no data, there are no staffs. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, using my post methodology with the insert route, I'm going to insert a new staff. Okay, so I know the URL is correct and the body and the row and JSON, everything is correct. So I'm going to paste a body. So now I will copy my reference of the staff object JSON format and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so Harry with the staff ID 1, 2, 3, 4 and age 25 is there. Okay, so let's change his name. Let's say let's say Jack, and the staff ID is 1111 and the age is, let's say, 20. Okay, and I'm going to post this guy. Okay, so it has been posted. Okay, and I will add another data. Okay, another member. Okay, this time we can have, let's say, Tom. I'm sorry, Tom staff ID is 2222 and the age is, let's say, 23. So I'm posting him as well. So status is 200. Okay, that means successful. Okay, and I will add one more person. Let's say Jerry, and the staff ID is 3333 and age is, let's say, 25. Okay, so that is also success. So I have posted 3 data into the list, and I'm going to check whether it has been successfully posted. So how to check? We have our typical methodology. I will go to the get call and I will try to access again all the staffs by hitting this endpoint. See, now you can see all the 3 members have been successfully added into the list. Jack is there with number 1111, Tom is with number 2222 and Jerry is with number 3333. So if you want to delete it, let's try to delete the Tom. Okay, using the staff ID, just to ensure all the functionalities are working fine before we moving to the next topic. So I'm going to delete endpoint and I'm going to pass an ID number 2222, and you know who is 2222? That is Tom. So I'm trying to delete Tom from our list. So I'm sending the call and status is okay. Okay, successful, 200. Okay, then I'm going to the get method for the staffs list and I'm trying to hit it again. Now you see Jerry has been, sorry, the number 2 has been disappeared. Okay, number 2222 ID has been deleted. I forgot the name. It is Tom, right? Tom has been removed. So we have only Jack and Jerry. We have only 2 members. So this works fine. So in the next video, we will see how we can have, or how we can do a put mapping scenario on this on our next API into the controller as our next endpoint. Okay guys, take care. Hello everyone. So in this video we will see how we can edit an existing staff member, or how we can update an existing staff member in the staffs list. So what I'm going to do is, first I will, since the array is an empty list, first I will add some staffs into the array. Okay, once I have added, I will simply try to change the staff name or staff age using the staff ID. Okay, so I'm trying to update it, right? I'm not deleting the staff, I'm not posting a new staff, I'm going to update the staff. Okay, so first what I will do is I will run the application and I will ensure I'm adding some data into that. Okay, let's not do that first. first let's write the in code and let's do that, right? So what I'm going to do is, if you want to update something, you have to write an endpoint with put mapping annotation. So put, you can see something like put mapping, right? So give put mapping and give a value called update, let's say. Okay, value update. Okay, then write a method public void update staff. Okay, and you can say, my bad. So for the moment you can write it. I will tell you what you're going to do. Okay, the same way, add request body staff. So what we are going to do is, okay, and also I'm going to pass okay, no, we don't need anything. So I add request body staff. This is fine. So what I'm going to do is, if you are passing a staff object, okay, let's say you are going to update a staff. Okay, for example, let's say we have Jack here. For example, assume we have Jack here and with staff ID 1111. So what I'm going to do is, for this particular staff ID, instead of the staff name Jack and age 20, I'm going to change the Jack and age to different values. Okay, so what I will do is, I will copy this and I'm going to send this data without changing the staff ID, keeping the staff ID as 1111, and I will change the name and the age and send the data. So what should happen is, I want this object be replaced by the same object but with a different name and age. Okay, so in another word, an object with the same staff ID inside the staffs list, the particular object's staff name and age should be updated. Okay, so this can be done using put method, because I'm trying to update an existing object, update the value of the existing object. I'm not adding something new, I'm not deleting anything, I'm just updating. Okay, so what I'm going to do inside the code is, so you're going to pass this staff, right? So the new staff value with the new, for the particular ID, with the new, let's say staff name and the age. Okay, so first what I will do is, I'm going to loop the staff object using the enhanced staff list, using the enhanced for loop, right? Staffs. Okay, then what I will do is, I will take each and every staff. Okay, so I will change this name. Okay, let's say staff in list. So that means every staff object inside the list. So this staff is coming from the user, this staff is existing inside the list. Okay, then I will say staff in list. Okay, and I will get its ID, staff ID. Okay, staff ID, in case the staff ID is equal to our incoming staff ID. Staff ID, because I'm trying to update an object using the staff ID, right? I'm going to identify the object using the staff ID and update the username, staff name and the age, right? So I will write it as an if condition. If staff ID, I'm sorry, this is not staff ID, it should be get staff ID. Okay, so this is the incoming object staff ID, this is the existing staff ID. So if both are equal, I'm going to update the existing staff's staff name and age with our incoming staff's staff name and age. That's what I'm trying to do, right? So the incoming mean whatever coming from the postman, existing mean whatever is already existing in the list. Okay, so what I will do is, I will say staff in list dot set staff name. We have setters and getters defined already when we created a staff class, right? Set staff name should be this staff's staff name, right? So I will say staff dot get staff name. Okay, so I'm collecting the staff name from the incoming staff and I'm updating the existing staff's staff name with that value. Okay, I'm getting this staff name and setting to this staff's staff name, right? Also I have to do the same thing with the age as well. So staff in list dot set age staff dot get age. Okay, so that's all actually I have to do, And what I can do is, if I hit again, if I want to verify, I can call this get mapping method and see whether the values have been changed for the particular staff ID, because it can return the whole staff list, right? So I hope this logic is clear, right? So this is the staff is the incoming staff, staff in list is the existing staff. Okay, so what I will do is I will again do a build. So the build is success. I'm going to run the application, and the application is up and running, right? So I'm opening my Postman, and what I'm going to do is, first I'm trying to hit the staffs and see whether it is an empty array, because initially there is nothing there, right, as we have seen in the last video. So it's an empty array, right? So for first I have to add some data. Okay, so for that I have my post methodology. So these things we have seen in the previous video, guys. So we'll add Jerry first. Okay, Jerry has been added, and I will add, let's say, Tom with 1111. Okay, Tom also has been added with the age 25. Okay, so for the moment these two data are enough. So I will go to the get call again, and I will again hit the endpoint and see whether it has been added. So those data are now available in the get endpoint. So we have staff named Jerry with ID 333 and Tom with 1111. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to update this particular object. Okay, an object with the staff ID 111. I'm going to change the name and the age. Okay, so for the moment, what I will do is I will change the name Tom to Tommy, Tommy, and the age to 25 to 35. Okay, using our put endpoint. Okay, so what I will do is I have to send a staff object for that with the new values, only the new values of the staff name and age. Okay, so I need my put endpoint first. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new endpoint. Okay, so if it is since it's an updated, or let's say since it's a put method mapping, we have to go for a put endpoint. How to do it? Scroll down, click the drop down, and you can see a put option here. Okay, and then you have to type the URL. Okay, so our URL is none other than update suffix. The root is update, right? So what you will do is here you remove the staffs and click update. Okay, so it should now hit our put endpoint. So again, go to the body, change it to row, let it be in JSON, and paste the data here. And now you are going to change the values, right? So Tom will be now Tommy. So I'm making it as Tommy, and age is as 35. Okay, but staff ID is 1111. So now it should change from Tom to Tommy and age 25 to 35. So I'm sending it. Status is 200. Okay, so how I can verify? Again, I will go to the all staffs URL, right? Get staffs URL, and see whether it has been changed. So let me hit it, and you can see the staff ID 111 has been now changed to Tommy and age 35. That means we have updated the existing staff with the new name and age 35 using our ID values. Okay, guys, so that's about put or update endpoint scenario. I'll catch you up in the next video. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen how we can create 4 endpoints in an API, 4 endpoint API with 4 different routes for 4 different scenarios, like get, delete, put, post, and put, right? So you can now do all the 4 operations that are called like create, update, delete, and retrieve, right? So all the four things sorry guys, so all the 4 things now you're able to do using API hit, basically. So you have the basic idea of how you can do 4 operations using 4 different routes in by writing 4 different APIs in one controller, so 4 different functionalities connected to each and every routes. So one thing I want to tell is like now you have what a controller is, right? Now you have some idea of what a controller is. So one thing is controller, what model is, right? So we normally write our code inside a controller connected to the routes being connected to the functionality, right? So but what actually the structure should be is Even though we start everything with the controller, the APIs are coming, the routes are hitting the functionalities in the controller, but we don't write all the code logics, or let's in another word, we don't write all the business logics inside the controller. Okay, we have a structure. Okay, so what actually we have to do is, when it comes to the logic, let's say this is a logic, right? This, we are looping the code and we are doing something and we are updating data. Okay, or even we are adding something to a list. This is also a logic. We are removing something from a list. This is also a logic, right? And we are returning a list. Obviously, this is also a logic. So all the logics, we don't directly write into the controller. What we normally do is we write a service class. Okay, so now you are being introduced to a new class called service class. So the business logic. Okay, so what we do is we don't write business logic inside the controller. What we do is these logics we bring into the service class. Okay, and once we write all the logics inside the service class, what we do is we create an object of the service class. Service class inside our controller class, and then we will call the respective methods from the service class objects inside our controller class. This is the proper way of doing the coding, right? So that means all the business logics should be a separate class called service class, and the service class should have all the logics within correctly or properly structured methods. And we have to create a let's say class or object of the service class inside our controller class, and we have to call the methods. We will now do it so that you can understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so for example, let's say I have created a service class, okay, first let's create a service class. Okay, so what I will do is I'll go here, I'll create a new package, and I will name it as service, like how I did it with controllers. Okay, so we have a new package called service, and within that I will create a new service class, new Java class, and we will say staff service. Okay, so that we have a new staff service class. For the moment, I don't write anything within this. What I will directly do is I will go to the staff controller class, and I will try to create an object of this service class over here. Okay, I will say staff service, and I will give the name as staff service with small letters or camel case, and I will create new staff service. Okay, we don't have to have any constructors within the service class because nothing of such is needed for the moment for our scenarios. So we will just create the service class object with the default constructor. So nothing is there. Okay, then what we should do is we are going to write the same name methods. Let's say if you want to get the staffs, okay, we are going to write a get staffs method inside the service class that is going to have this logic. Okay, then from the service class object I'm going to call that method, and I am going to return value. I'm going to have the return value here where my cursor is. Okay, so that whatever we were doing inside the controller class will be done and returned at the same location, but now it will be done in the service class. Okay, so I will say staff service dot get staffs method, get staffs. Now one thing is we don't have this method implemented inside the service class. That is why I'm getting the error. Obviously I didn't write anything. So what I will do is I'm going to write the implementation of the method inside the service class. So I will go here. It will give me an option, create method get staffs inside in staff service. It intelligently automatically suggests. Otherwise you can manually go and write the same method. Okay, so I'll click it here, and you can see it has gone into the service class, and there's a method has been created with an empty body. Okay, now what I have to do is I have to bring the logic inside this method. Okay, so what is the logic? Just returning the staffs list array, right? So what I will do is I will cut this line, or let's say I will copy this line, and I will paste it here. Basically I'm bringing the whole logics there, but it says we don't have a staffs list. Okay, what is the problem? This line, creating a new array list of staffs, also I should bring inside the service class. I will copy this, and I'll paste it here. Okay, that means everything that was inside the controller class now being brought into the service class. So one another thing is the service class object method should return a list of staff, right? So it shouldn't be a void. So list of staff. Okay. So now that what we have to do is we have to simply call the service staff service get staffs method, and we have to return the value of that directly here. And we don't want this return staffs method anymore. Logic. See, now the logic or business logic have been moved into the service class with the same methodology name, and in the controller class we don't have any business logic. What we do is we simply call the service staff service object, and we call the particular method, and we return whatever the method returns. We directly returns here. Okay, so the same thing I'm going to do with this delete, post and put. Okay, so what I will do is I'll go into the post, delete. So in the first line I will write service staff service dot delete staff. Okay, so the delete staff method is not there. What I will do is I'm going to create the method inside the service. Okay, so the method has been created. You can even manually go and type it. So I hope for our understanding, what I am doing is I am just writing an non-existing method, and I am creating that afterwards. So I'll go to the delete staffs in controller. So I wrote the method here, and now I'm going to bring this logic, the complete logic, inside the service class. So this is our logic, right? The whole for loop. So I will copy it and paste here. See here. And one more thing is here, this method, okay, this delete staff method is passing a staff ID, right? So this pass staff ID, because the staff ID is being used in the logic, right? So this should be passed inside the staff service delete staff method, right? So what I will do is I will pass it here. After passing it, I will go to the staff service, and I will change the method to take an integer staff ID. The same way we wrote this controller method, we are writing it in the service class. Okay, same logic. Okay, since this method is not returning anything and it is just a void method, we don't need to return anything. All I have to do is I have to remove this business logic from this particular method. Okay, so see, look at the delete staff method in controller. Simply this delete staff method, take a path variable from the URL and take the variable as staff ID, and it is passing to the some same named delete staff method into the staff service class. So whatever the logic we had inside the delete staff method of the controller, all the methods are now inside our staff service method. Okay, so I will manually do one thing, and let's see how it works now. So we have, let's say we have the staffs.add logic for the add staff, right? That is going to take a staff object as a parameter, right? So what I will do is I will write the same method in the service class. Okay, instead of first writing the method with an error and then creating, I will first create the method and replace it here, right? So add staff, and it is going to take a staff. So add staff, it's going to take a staff object, right? So what I'm going to do is I will simply create the method in the staff service class. Okay, so I will first note how the method has been structured. Okay, I'm going to add the staff into the list. Okay, so I'll go to the staff service method. I will type public. It's not going to return anything, void. The same name I will write, add staff, and it is going to take the staff object, right? As we have seen in the controller already, staff. And what is the business logic we have to have? I'll go to my controller. So this is just simply adding the one staff to the list. So I'll take it, copy this, and I'll simply paste it here. The same way, same implementation. Okay, since our internal list also the same name within the staff service, staffs. Okay, the list of the staffs are in the staff service also having the same name. There's no errors. We're adding the object into the staffs list. I hope it is clear. Okay, then what I will do is I'll go to the staff controller. Now I don't need this because I'm going to call the staff service object and pass the value, right? So what I will do is I will call the staff service dot add staff method and pass this staff into that method. I'll copy this and pass it here. I hope this is clear, guys. So for these two scenarios, I took a different approach. For this, I first wrote the method inside the service and called it here. So whatever the most comfortable way you can go for, whatever is most, both are same actually. Whatever you understand, whatever was easy to understand for yourself, you can go with that. Okay. Again, I'm going to do the same thing here. Here I see this is a public void update staff method. I'm going to update the staff using a staff, and by passing the staff object as a parameter, and I'm going to have the business logic here. So what I will do is I'm going to write the same method inside the service class and pass the same business logic for this service class. Okay, so I will just take the method name first, copy, and I'll go to the service class and I will paste it so that the name will not be changed. It is easy to me. And I will again go to the controller and see, okay, I'm going to pass a staff object. I don't need the request body and all because these have been extracted from the URL. So that thing only being done in the controller. Okay. So I'm just taking the staff object because I need the staff object to be passed inside my service class method to do the business logic, because we are doing something with the staff object, right? So I will say, okay, I will first copy these two words and I will pass it inside my service class method. Once I'm done, I'll create the method. Now I need the logic, right? And I know where the logic is. Whatever is inside this controller method, class method, is the complete logic, right? So I will copy this logic and paste it here. Okay, so I have pasted the complete logic inside the staff service class. Okay, now we have a functional code method. Now I'm going to call it inside the same respective method in the controller. So I'll go here. I will remove the whole logic because I have copied it and pasted in staff service object. So I have removed it. Simply, I have to call the staff service class. And I will call the respective method update staff. Okay, same method, right? That I wrote now. And I have to pass this staff object inside the method. Okay, that's all, guys. So I hope now this is very clear. Nothing to be confused. And also, I have moved the staffs array also separately inside the staff service class, isn't it? So I don't need this array also anymore because I don't know I'm not going to do any business logic inside the controller class. So I will remove the staffs list as well. So all I need is as a global variable the object of the staff service class, nothing else. And simply if you go through the code, you will see everywhere I simply call some methods from this staff service class and the method names. Staff service class and the method name, staff service class and the method name, staff service class and the method name. Okay, nothing else we normally do inside the controller. Every logic should be simply going to service class, the respective method. So whatever you want to do, now you can play around. If you want to change something, if you want to change some business logic, or if you want to modify some business logic, you are going to do inside the service class. Nothing is touched inside this controller class. This will remain like this, very neat and clean. You got it, guys? So we take the root, we connect, assign it to functionality, or methodology, and the methodology will simply pass the call another methodology or business logic from the staff service. Sometimes by passing a method, passing a variable or value, sometimes just calling, depending on our purpose. And if the staff service returning a value, we are returning it directly in the controller, like this. You got it? So everywhere the same. So this is the pure structure of how to write controller and passing the data to the service, or passing the next level of functionality or business logic to the service. Okay, guys. So since we have wrote the code, I hope now it is very clear to you. In the next video, we will see the functionality of the code. That means whether the functionality, the 4 scenarios are working as expected, in other words, whether all the functionalities are working as they worked when we had all the logics or business logic inside the controller itself. Because now we moved the code, or we moved the business logic to the service class, but we don't want the functionality to be affected. We want the functionality to work as it worked while all the codes were inside the controller class. So we have to test all the scenarios, get, delete, post, and put once again, since we moved the code there to the other class, to the service class, and ensure nothing is affected, everything is working fine. We will see that in the next video, guys. Until then, take care. Bye. Hello everyone. So the last video we have seen how to move our code or business logic from controller class to service class, and we have even moved it. So basically, like all the logics or code implementation or business logic, everything was supposed to be in our service layer or in service class, not in the controller layer, right? So controller layer simply has to have a service object and call the respective method from the service class, service object, and return them or use them. That's all the controller is supposed to do. Rest is related to this post or get or delete mapping, delete or put mapping, and also related to the functionality and the routing. That's all controller is supposed to do. So for avoiding some issues, I'm going to a little bit modify my staff service code a little bit, especially like these for loops. I'm going to modify because I found this enhanced for loop has some issues when we are testing the scenarios, like concurrency issues. So I don't want to get into that in detail since we are studying and the basic things now. So for that reason, to avoid any blockers or issues, I'm going to change this enhanced for loop to a traditional for loop, right? So here what I will do is we are seeing the for loop in two places, right? Delete staff and update staff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write another for loop here and remove this existing for loop, right? So for the moment I will keep this for loop for reference and I will write the traditional for loop, right? So I'm going to loop the staff classes, staff array. So I will write for int I is less than, my bad. Okay, then within that I'm going to verify the staff ID, right? So I will take the particular element on that I index and I simply go for its staff ID. I'm writing if condition. I'm referring the second for loop, this for loop, and writing the first for loop now, right? Just in other words, I'm referring this and converting it into this traditional for loop, right? So then I'm going to remove that staffs dot remove, and I'm going to remove the particular object, right? So staffs dot get I object. So if you know some knowledge, if you have some knowledge in the for loops, you know what I'm doing. Okay, so this is none other than the same version of this enhanced for loop. So now I'm removing the for loop and keeping only the traditional this I based for loop. So I'm going to do the same thing in this other for loop as well. So what I will do is I will again type it. So the same logic. Also I'm setting the age. Okay, so I simply converted this for loop to the enhanced for loop. and only keeping this enhanced for loop for further development. Okay, I'm not doing it. Okay, so it's a simple conversion, nothing but just a conversion. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to save the application, build and run for testing for these success scenarios. That in other words, since I have moved my code from controller to service class and also like modified these for loops, I just want to ensure or I just want to make sure the code was working as it worked while the logic was inside the staff controller, right? We just simply did the code code refactoring or organize the code in proper ways by moving it to service class. So nothing should be affected in the functionality point of view. So I just want to verify the functionality, that's all. Okay, so I simply run the application now. The build is success. So the application is up and running. So I'm going to test it now. Okay, so first I will do a get call and by hitting the get endpoint of the controller class. So I will keep the controller class open. Okay, I'm going to test it first. So you're sending a request and status is okay, and it is an empty array, right? Because initially we don't have any data added inside, right? So it's an empty array we start with. Okay, then I'm going to add the data. So I will use my post endpoint. Okay, insert endpoint. So I'm going to add this data, maybe 1111, and the name is, let's say, Harry. Okay, I'm going to add the data. So 111. So I'm going to add one more data, 2222, and maybe Jack, and age is 22. Added it. This is also okay, and 3333, maybe Rose. Okay, so I have inserted 3 data with success scenarios. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the get call again and see whether it has been successful. Okay, see, all the 3 data has been added successfully, right? With the ID 1111, 2222, and 333, and Harry, Jack, and Rose. So that means my get endpoint is working as expected, and also my post, that means adding endpoint, is also working as expected. Okay, so that means this post and get are fine, right? So I'm going to check with this delete and update endpoint, right? So that means I'm going to do delete one data now. So let's try to delete the rows using 333 ID, right? So I'm copying the ID. So I'm going for my delete endpoint. So this is my delete endpoint. So I'm trying to delete the employee with the ID 333. So that means I'm trying to delete the rows data, right? I'm sending it. So status is okay. So again I'm going to get endpoint. So this data should have been deleted now, right? So I will go for the call. So this is the data from the previous call. So I will go again and hit it. So you see it has been removed, right? So we have only Harry and Jack, 1111 and 2222. The ID with 333 has been deleted. So now I'm going to test my put endpoint, that means update endpoint. So what I will do is I will try to update the Jack's name as and age with new names using the ID 2222. So what I will do is I will go to my endpoint, I'll keep update and make the ID as 2222, because using this ID from the staff ID only we are going to update it, right? And let's keep the name as Droney and 35. So if you go for the once you are done, this Jack should be Droney and the age should be 35. You get it? Because that is my new data for this same 2222 ID, right? So I'm going for the call now. So this is status 200, okay, right? So I will again, so since this call has been done, update, I'm going to again go for the get call and check it. So you can see the ID with the 2222 has been named, has been changed to Droney and age 35. Jack has become Droney with the new age 35, right? So that means all my endpoints are working as expected. Okay, put, post, delete, and get. So that means we are good, even though we have refactored our code. Nothing is affected in the functionality point of view, guys. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have checked how to move our code into the service layer, and also we have verified the functionality and ensured it works as expected, as we wanted. So we are good now, but one thing I wanted to tell is basically like for example, if you are going to add the staff, okay, let's say think about the add staff method that has been moved into the staff service class now. So for example, the user can go here and add any number of staffs, right? But one thing I want to tell you is the staff ID is something unique to everyone, right? Because when we are going to delete a name member, we are using the staff ID. When we are going to update a member, we are using the staff ID. So two different members can have same staff name, can have same age, but they cannot have same staff ID. So basically staff ID cannot be duplicated. So when the only way the data is being added is by using this insert post method, right? So what we have to do is when the user is inserting the data using the post method, we should not allow the user to insert same staff ID more than one time. Okay, so for example, if the user is inserting the staff ID with 3334 one time, if he hits again, we should not allow him to do it. Okay, so basically that's what we have to do. So this is a validation we have to do. So actually if we are going into this, it will take a lot of details, but I will show you a simple way of doing this validation and the importance of it. Later in the series we will see how to do it properly. Okay, so here we comes. So we know when we hit this insert route, it will come here, right, in our controller, and obviously it will go inside the method and it will go to the staff service add staff method. So if you go there, we are simply adding the staff to the list of staffs, right? That means for this. So we don't do any validation. We don't check whether their ID is already existing or not. Okay, so actually what we have to do is we have to check whether a staff with the same ID is existing in the staffs list. If a person is existing already with the same ID, we should not allow it to happen. I mean, we should prevent the duplication. So how we can do is, I need to write a for loop to loop the members of the staffs list, and then I need to check each and everyone's staff ID. So if anyone's staff ID is matching with the incoming staff ID, that means already a staff is existing with the same staff ID. I should prevent that insertion from happening. In other words, I should not allow the insertion to happen. Okay, so what I will do is I will write a for loop and I will say int I is equal to 0, I is less than staffs dot size I plus plus. Sorry. Okay, then what I will do is I will take each member of the staffs list and I will take his staff ID and check if it is equal to the incoming staff ID. So that should come inside an if condition, guys. Okay, then what I should do is, okay, I will see, okay, if any existing staff ID is equal to our postman giving, that means the user passing staff ID, we should prevent it from happening. So how we can do it? That's a question. So what I am saying is, okay, for example, let's say we have to stop the application from letting it happen, and we should ensure that application again goes to this line. It is not going to this line again, because otherwise, even if this is I mean, if we break the flow here, okay, and say, okay, you shouldn't enter, then the code should not go here, because if the code goes here, the value is being added inside the list. Okay, so one good way is throwing an exception here inside the if condition. Okay, so that when you throw an exception, the program stops over there, it doesn't go beyond that. Okay, so when the user is giving a wrong entry or duplicated entry, we are going to stop the application here by throwing a runtime exception. Okay, so if you have some idea about exception, you will know what I am going to do. So I will say throw new. I will go for a client error exception because the mistake is from the client side, because they are giving a duplicated value to us. Client error exception, and I will give a status of HTTP status dot, there's something called conflict. So normally For duplication, we can give conflict. So this is a like error that I mean, there is an inbuilt error, I mean available errors in this HTTP statuses. So you don't have to get into this much, but just understand what I'm doing, and you can simply do the same thing. And you can also type a message saying a duplicate entry not allowed. Okay, so I'm doing it inside my service class, and what will happen is, if the user is giving a duplicated entry, the if condition will come here, the if condition will become true, and we will come to the exception location, and whenever an exception is being thrown, the application flow doesn't go beyond that line, so the flow stops here. Okay, so it will not be added anyway here, right? So a runtime error will be thrown here, so nothing to worry. So what I will do is, I will simply open the terminal and do a build quickly. So in case, I want to tell you one thing, in case while looping it, if you don't find a match, that means it's a new entry, no any matching staff ID is there, right? Or in other words, it is not a duplication scenario. This if condition will not become true at any point. So we will never throw an exception. Simply, once the for loop is finished, we will simply go and add the staff to the staffs list. Okay, in that case, we will be good. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to run the application. So the application is up and running. So Tomcat started port 8080 and management application started, right? So we are good. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to take the postman. First I'll go to the get method, and I will see if there is anything existing. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong get method. Okay, this one. Okay, you see we have an empty array with the success status 200. Okay, and then I will go to the post scenario, and I will send this data 3334 rows with h22, right? So it is successful, right? 200. Okay, that means I have sent the data. Again, I will go to get and hit it to see whether the data has been successfully added. You can see ID 3334 rows h22 has been added successfully. What I'm going to do now is, I'm going to verify my validation whether when I hit it again, when I hit the call again, that means the insertion again, or in another word, when I am trying to add another staff with the same staff ID 3334, whether I am being prevented, whether I am not allowed to do it. Okay, I'm going to check it. Okay, so that means I'm going to click send again, so that the duplicated staff ID based entry is now going to be inserted, and it has to be rejected. Okay, you are seeing we are setting an error, right? 500 error, internal server error, right here. That means we are not successful in our operation, right? Duplicate entry has not been added. If you want to verify, you can again go to the get method and click, and you don't see, there is only one record, no duplicate has been added. That means second insertion has been failed, it was not successful. Or in another word, again, if we see the post method, we can see the 500 internal error, internal server error. Okay, so what happened here is, according to our code logic, when we are trying to insert this staff again, so we came to the controller initially through this routing and go to the add staff, and there, if we go here, we looped and we found already 3334 Mary staff was there. So it is simply throwing a client error exception. Okay, conflict. So where we can see our customized exception is, we can take the IntelliJ logs and have a look here, runtime logs. Okay, here you can see HTTP client error exception is thrown, and it says 409 duplicate entry not allowed. So the same text I passed here is being printed here. Okay, and it also give you the line of the error. Okay, we are line number 29. See, so that means wherever I throw the exception, it shows it there. That means the application has come here and it thrown an exception, and the code is not allowed to go further. Okay, that means we have prevented the duplicate insertion by using an exception. Okay, but unfortunately, even though we say it, but unfortunately, if we throw an exception, the exception is shown in our terminal, okay, IntelliJ runtime terminal, but I mean run logs, but in the postman we don't see the error, right? in the Postman we show only a 500 internal error. Our customized error was not be able to be shown in the terminal, right? Because the error we wanted to show was this 409, right? The conflict related one, right? The expected status is 409, but what we showed was some other error, right? And our customized string also was not shown in this Postman, right? Postman only has 500 an internal server error, no matter even we customized it. But only the benefit is while we throwing the exception, the application stopped over here. I mean that the code flow stopped over here. Application was running, code flow stopped over here. The code or the programming flow didn't go beyond that. That means we didn't add the data. But and also we were able to throw the application error or show the error logs and status in our IntelliJ run logs, not in the user side Postman side. But actually what we are supposed to do is, in this kind of scenarios, we should be able to show the user what is the error. He should be able to see, okay, this is conflict with 409 error, because that is what we are customizing here, this error. And also with the text we gave, duplicate entry, that is what he has to show, he has to see, that is what we have to show him. But unfortunately we cannot do it. If we want to do it, there is a way. We have to make some changes in the controller code. So for example, if you want to do it, we have to ensure this method, this insert method in the controller class should be able to return the particular status in an error case, the particular error status and the error code. Okay, now our method is, or our respective functionality is returning a void. That means it doesn't return anything, it's a void method. So we have to change its return type to such a possible response returning scenario. And also in success scenario we have to return in success scenario we have to return 200 related response, and in the error scenario we have to return our customized error status and error as it is here. So we have to make some changes in the controller accordingly. But the thing is, the purpose of this tutorial is not to do that now. Okay, we will see that in the later tutorials, but we have more prioritized thing to see in upcoming videos. So for the moment we will ignore this error handling scenario for the sake of learning other things. All I wanted to show you is we needed to do this kind of validation to avoid duplicated data to be added, and one way is throwing an exception here. Okay, so for the moment I will revert it back because we are going to learn things only, and we are assuming, okay, we are not going to provide any duplicate values. So for the moment I am removing it, and we will focus on learning more on the database and repository side, how we can bring our data to bring the inserted data to repository layer and handle databases and all those things. Okay guys, then I will meet you up in the next video regarding those topics. Take care. Hello everyone. In the last video we talked that in this video we are going to talk about the database layer or repository layer, where we are going to deal with database connections, because any data, okay, be it a staff's list or staff data the user gives as an input, we cannot store it in temporary lists, because if you store it in temporary lists inside the code, inside the program, simply when you stop and rerun the program, the data will be lost. Okay, that is why every time we run and test, the get method gives us an empty list. We have to again input it to see do any further operations. So if I add few data during the application running, when I stop the application and restart, again we will start with the empty list, right? Because the application, whenever the application starts, we lost all the data and we start from the new array list. So that is why we need a database connection always. So we start from controller, we move to service, and from that we have to go to database connection. That connection handling scenario is called repository. So we should basically have a repository package, whether we have controller, service, model, like that, we are going to have a repository package. There we should have repository related classes that is dealing with any database queries or adding the data, getting the data, things like that, and that should be connected to the service class. And from the service class, again, it should go to the controller. So the logic should go controller, service, and repository. So before we start with repository class or repository anything, first we have to set up the database or database related things in our local machine. or wherever we are running this application. So for that, one thing we can do is we need MySQL. So I hope you guys are aware what is MySQL is, and also it's better if we have MySQL Workbench. Okay, so you can download MySQL and MySQL Workbench and set up those things. I will add the video in my description, video link. Just follow this out, and you will be able to download and set up MySQL and obviously MySQL Workbench as well. So if you are watching this video and if you haven't set up MySQL or Workbench, I want you to pause the video for a moment, click the link in the description, and watch the video and follow the steps to set up MySQL and MySQL Workbench, and continue from this point again. Okay, so because in my local I have already set up MySQL and Workbench, I'm just going to proceed with that now. Okay, so I will show you one thing before that. Before we proceed with the MySQL, I just want you to go to the application and simply go to your service class, and I want you to annotate it with an annotation called service annotation. Okay, so for the moment even though we don't need it, I want you to do it because in future when we are doing things, I want you to avoid going through any errors. So when we in the controller, you see we are annotating the class with address controller method. That is helping the application to understand this is the controller class. So and when we go to that service class, likewise, I want you to annotate it with add service method. So this will prevent errors in upcoming videos or upcoming flows. So please ensure you are doing this. Okay, so let's go back to the MySQL or database setups, and let's see how we are going to do things. Okay, so if you download MySQL and if you have set up the MySQL database and Workbench, looking at the video in the description, now that means you have MySQL in your local. Okay, so what you have to do is simply go to your search bar and search for CMD. Okay, and you're opening a command window, and then what you have to do is you have to type MySQL -u and your username. So if you have watched the video and set up this MySQL, you know how to log in this way into MySQL. So my MySQL username is root. Okay, and again -p to input the password. Okay, and before inputting the password, you have to press enter. Okay, then it will ask you to enter your password. So my password is root. Root is the one that I have set up for password as well. So I will type root and enter. Okay, then that means the MySQL has successfully up and running, started. Okay, so that will give me a MySQL terminal. Okay, so if you have watched the video in the description, obviously you know what I am doing. Okay, now what I can do is I can see what are the databases I have created, or what are the tables there. Everything I can see through this. Okay, so if you if I want to see the existing databases, what I will do is I will say show databases and a semicolon. So this will show me my existing databases. So I have an information schema, MySQL performance schema, render vehicle, and SYS databases. So this is all I have. Okay, so for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new database for my application. Okay, so my application is a staff management system, right? Something like that, or a staff or something, staff management application. So let me create a database called staff management. Okay, so what I will do is I'll go to my terminal or command prompt, and I will type create database, and I will give the name that I want to give. So I will give, let's say, staff management. Okay, I will create a database with the name of staff management. So if you know some basics of MySQL, you know what I'm doing. Okay, so the query okay, one row affected means this has been successfully added. So I can again see the databases using the keyword called show databases. So you can see here my staff management database has been added. So you can check with the previous query results, the current results. You can compare both, and you can find newly this database has been created. Okay, so since I have created my databases for this for my application, now I can proceed with the rest of the work. So for the easiness of the work or easiness of the understanding, I'm going to use MySQL Workbench, which I have installed along with the MySQL. So if you have watched the video in the description, you know you also have it in your local, and you know what you are doing. Okay, so I will open my MySQL Workbench, this one. It's up and running now. Okay, so I will open my MySQL instance here. Okay, so here you can see that the database I have created is existing here, that has been successfully created. Rent a vehicle, staff management, and sys. Okay, so here you can see again, if you go to the CMD, you can see rent a vehicle, staff management, and sys. You can ignore the first three inbuilt databases that is not related to us. So that database I created is staff management, right? So that is also visible in the MySQL workbench. Okay, so I'm going to play around with that. So if, for the moment, the staff management doesn't have any tables, right? Tables topic is empty. There is nothing inside, right? So what I have to do is we need a table inside that, okay, to do things or play around with that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create we are supposed to create a table inside the staff management database. Okay, so before that, I need to set up few things in my IntelliJ local. So what I will do is I will go to my application, and what I have to do is I want my application to enable my application to deal with this existing database. I mean, I want my application to handle or create new tables or add data to the new tables or receive data from the new tables or delete or update. I want my application to do those things. Okay, so if my application wants to do those things, I need to add few things in my application. One thing is I need to enable my application to handle these database connections. For that, what I'm going to need is something called Hibernate. Okay, Hibernate is a scenario in Spring Boot that will help you to handle with databases. Okay, and also I will need a MySQL connector and Spring Boot JPA starter, things like that. Don't get yourself much involved into this at the moment, but remember, we need some dependencies for my Spring Boot that enables my Spring Boot application to handle all these database related things. Basically, we need all these 4 dependencies in my Spring Boot application to do things. So what are dependencies? What is the concept of dependency? Or actually what happens when you add a dependency to your Spring Boot application, or where to add the dependency? All these things we will see in the next videos. So to proceed further with this database related application enabling for enabling my application to handle databases. So guys, I will catch you up in the next video. Hello everyone. So in the last video we started to talk about dependencies because when we try to learn Spring Boot, when it comes to Maven or Gradle or any project. So currently our project is a Maven project. So any project we talking about dependency is something very, very important, because dependencies are none other than, like, let's say you are going to you are developing a Spring Boot application and you are going to add a new feature. Let's say you are going to add a database connection, or you are going to do something else. So initially when you generate the project, you generate it with some basic features. Let's say you wanted to develop a Spring Boot web application, so you wanted to add a dependency of Spring Web. That means Java or Spring Boot or system knows is going to use some Spring Web related things. So when you use annotations, when you use things this and that those kind of data can be or things can be accessed from that dependency. Okay, so let's say when you are adding this and when you build the project using Maven clean install, or there is another way to do this, like you can reload these projects. When you're doing these kind of things, these dependencies will download the necessary things, tools, library, jar, or anything that is needed to work with that particular web application. For example, you are adding Spring Web as a dependency. So when you add this Spring Web as a dependency, what happens is when you build the application, the system or the application will create necessary things or features that is needed for that particular web application development. For example, in another word, we can say like this: if you are using the REST controller annotation, or if you are going to use get mapping annotations, these are not in the basic Java. Okay, how these became acceptable keywords in the programming in this application? Because of that, you added that Spring Web dependency here. You added this so that the dependency will download or take all the necessary details or data, things that is needed for web application, and instruct them for the application or code or keep somewhere. Okay, so when you go for these annotations, these will be available in the application just because you added the particular dependency. Okay, so what is this POM and all those things? I will show you something. You may remember when we started this application, we went to Spring IO, right? We went to Spring IO and we went to the Spring IO home, right? So if you click it, you will see the Spring IO home, Spring home, right? And we went here and we started with the Spring initializer. Okay, so then we selected Maven and we added some dependency, right? So for example, we added Spring Web. Okay, and you just generated the file and you just opened the project and you started working on that. But behind the scenes, what happened was, when you are generating this project, a POM file will be created. That means a file named pom.xml will be created inside the project directory. So basically, you can see the POM file here. So in our directory, in our application, when you expand it, you will see a POM file here, right? So this was generated the moment you generate the Spring application. Okay, we never looked into that because this was not needed at the initial point. Okay, so now back to the Spring IO website. So when this is how I generated, right? So I added this dependency here and I clicked generate, right? Instead of that, what I can do is, if I want to see how the POM file is generated, I can click the explore. Okay, if you click the explore, this will show you the structure of your POM file, where the dependencies and everything are there. Okay, so if you scroll it down, you can see there's a XML tag called dependencies. Within that, number of dependencies are there. So there are two dependencies are there. Okay, dependency 1 and then dependency 2. So one is the Spring Boot starter web and the other one is Spring Boot starter test. So that, what does it mean is, when you generate a project with Spring Web dependency, these two dependencies are added related in regard to that. Okay, so these two dependencies are enough to develop a Spring Boot application, web application. Okay, so I wanted to tell you again. So let's say while you are keep developing the application, you want to add a database scenario. Okay, you want to add something related to MySQL. You want your application to communicate with MySQL or things like that. So you have to find the respective dependency and you have to add that dependency again when in the initializer. Okay, so if you add that dependency, okay, let's say I'm adding a dependency called let's see, MySQL is there now. See, MySQL driver, it is a dependency. So this dependency may help you to your application to write code that can connect to MySQL database in your local. So I have added that dependency and I can explore my POM file. Okay, my bad. It should be a Maven project. I will do it again. Okay, I'll make it Maven and I will add MySQL. Okay, so I will explore it and I can see in my POM file this. See, I am having two. Now I am having a few three dependencies, right? One is Spring Boot framework and Spring Boot starter test. Along with that, I have one more. The third one is MySQL connector. How this came into the project POM file? Because in the project I added this dependency while I'm creating. So my POM file will look like this if I added that MySQL dependency. Okay, so let's say initially when we generated our application, okay, we added only Spring Web dependency because we always wanted to create a controller with an API. So due to that, we had this and these dependencies, only two dependencies was automatically created in my POM file. But with time, I may think, okay, I need database connection, so I need MySQL related something to my application to write such relative code to that. To write code related to the MySQL, I need the dependency related to that. So I wanted to add it again. Okay, but I cannot regenerate my project. What I can do is I can copy this particular dependency related to MySQL and I can post in my existing POM file. Okay, like this in the middle. Okay, like this. Okay, I don't know why I'm not able to paste it. Am I recording now? Yeah, still doing. Okay. So I will try to do it again. So I can paste it here. Okay. So if I paste it here and if I build my project again, so this particular dependency related things, libraries or anything will be updated or downloaded to my local and I will be able to write code that can or keywords or things that is related to MySQL connection. Okay, this from this library that code that availability will be there. I can write code with that write MySQL related code without any errors. If there is no dependency, this dependency is not added, and I'm trying to write the MySQL related code, the application will tell me this is an unknown keyword. These are unknown words to me. I don't know what it is. Okay, so adding a dependency is important in that condition. So by creating the project, we are not aware what other dependencies we will need in future, because future we may think, okay, I need database connection, I need this, that. So at that time I need to manually come to my POM file and add dependencies. Okay, so that we can develop an application with new features. So that's all actually it is. So if you want to find relative dependencies, you can go to the Spring Initializer and add the dependency. Okay, you can always go to the Spring Initializer, add the respective dependency, just for your purpose. What you can do is, for if you want a MySQL dependency, okay, you can add it here and you can explore it and you can find, okay, if you have some kind of knowledge, you can find, okay, this is the relative dependency, and you can simply copy it and you can post it in your POM file and you can build it, so that part of it, that aspect also added in your project. Okay, so why I am talking this much is, when we are going to bring our project to the next level by handling the databases, by adding MySQL or database connections, repositories, we have to add some more dependencies, related dependencies, so that when I am doing it, you should know what we are doing. Okay guys, so I'll meet you in. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen what is actually basically a dependency, and how we can add the dependency to our project and build it. Okay, so our purpose is now to bring our code to the next level. Like we are going to add a repository layer where we are going to write the code that is related to database or database connection or database handling. So to do that, to make my application able to handle database related things, so to make my application to contain a database related code, I need some dependencies to be added. So I have separately stored the dependencies in a notepad. I will copy from there and paste, but because initially I don't want you to get into so much deep things, so basically I will just paste them, and I will give these dependencies in my description so that you also can copy and paste simply. But with time, I hope you will be able to catch up what are the, for your purposes, what are the dependencies you have to add and how you are going to handle it. For example, I will show you, see, I'm having this particular dependency here, MySQL connector, that I showed you in the previous video, that is related to the Spring, what do you call, in the Spring Initializer, that is related to MySQL, right? So that dependency is in my local, I mean in my notepad. So I can show you if you want. So if you go for MySQL, and you will see a MySQL connector, right? This dependency is there. So this I have in my notepad. So this is that dependency only. I will add to my IntelliJ, right, POM file. And there is something called Spring Boot Starter Data JPA. So I'm using another dependency called let me see, I can find the name correctly. Okay, maybe I will type JPA. See, Spring Data JPA. This is related for MySQL. So if you click that and if you explore the form file, you will, oh, sorry, my bad again. So if you okay, I will do it again, JPA. Okay, so explore. Okay, if you add that particular dependency, and if you go inside your dependencies, and you will see Spring Boot Starter Data JPA related dependencies there. So that thing also in my notepad. right? And along with that, there are some other dependencies that is actually needed for my purpose, database purpose. So I am going to like simply add these dependencies in my POM file basically. Okay, so I'll give you the data. So all I want to know is so that you can I mean, I will give you the data in my description so that you can copy it and use, but all I want you to know is you should know what you are doing. Okay, so that's why I was explaining all these things. So what I will do is I will go to my application and I will add this dependencies somewhere inside these dependencies. You get it, right? There are two dependencies available already here, 1 and 2, and I will add my ones in the middle. Okay, so I have pasted them now. Okay, so some dependency related to H2 database and Hibernate related dependency and MySQL connector and Spring Boot data JPA dependencies are there. Why each and every dependency is needed and for our purpose, and what is the purpose of each and every dependency, we are not going to get into that now, because now we will try to add this database layer, repository layer, and we will see how the system is going to work. So the purpose of the dependencies, what each and every dependency works, you can search for yourself, or we will, if time permits, we will see later in this series. Okay, so since I have added the dependencies, all I have to do is I have to do a small build so that the contents or the libraries or whatever related to the dependencies can be downloaded or can be taken inside. Okay. So I will simply do a Maven build. You can search for yourself what happens when you are doing a Maven build. Internally what happens, you can look for that in the internet. But I don't want to say everything, because if I say everything, it will contain a lot of things. So build is success. That means whatever the dependencies are meant to be done has been done, or in other words, the related contents to the dependencies have been downloaded now by building the application. Actually, that is the purpose of adding the dependency. Writing these two lines is not only going to help. Using these two lines, when we are building the application is going to download few things, respective things for each and every dependency. That is what matters. Okay, so let's not get much into this. We just have added dependencies in the POM file, which is needed for database connectivity, or which is needed to write code related to database connection or database handling or whatever. Okay, so in the POM file, and we have built the application as well. We are good. So now what we have to do is, okay, we have a local database now. We are able to connect with the database now, but still we need to provide some settings to my application so that it can go and reach our database without an issue. For example, if I am running this application in my local, in my laptop, I'm going to connect the application to my laptop, my database. Hello everyone. So in this last series of videos, we have seen that when you are how we add dependencies, especially the dependencies related to database connectivity. So in this video, I was telling that okay, these database dependencies in the POM XML, they, even though we have them, add them, as we have added them, our application is able to communicate with my database. Okay. So since my application is up and running in my let's say in my local, this application IntelliJ, so it is going to connect with my local database. That in other words, I'm going to connect this application with the database, that is MySQL database, that is running in my laptop. Okay, so if I go here, if I open a command prompt, and if I type MySQL, my username, root, and my password, my database is ready here, right? So my MySQL is ready. So I can see my databases and do things. So you may see I needed the username, password, and things like that, right, to log in and do few things in my database. Okay, so likewise, if the application is going to access the database, so this is the database we are going to access, right? If my application is going to access my database and do few things, my Spring Boot application also need my username, password, and some other configurations, right? So we have to provide this configuration to my Spring Boot application so that it can deal or contact or communicate with the database without any issues, without facing any troubles. Okay, so for that we have to add few things to a file called application.properties. So you just have to go to your project and you can see there is something called src and main, and you go to resources and you will see a file called application.properties. Open the file. This file is generated when you generate your project. Okay, there you have to add few things. That means the details. For example, if you want to, for example, the details or credential related to database, you can give here. The Spring Boot can use them when it is connected to the database. So I have a set of details that is supposed to be added there. I will give them in the description so that you also can use later on this series, or way later in somewhere we can check what is the meaning of this each and every line. For the moment you can understand. So the first thing is Spring data source URL, right? So this is simply where my database is up and running. So by default your MySQL database will be running in localhost 3306. Okay, like how our application is running in localhost 8080, MySQL will run in localhost 3306. And you have already created a database called staff management by manually, right? We have done it. If you have not done it, you have to do it. Okay, so if you see your databases here, you will see the staff management is there, right? So you have to mention it here. Okay, so you have to mention this whole string along with the database name. So by this, your application will know any data or things I'm going to handle, I'm going to do will be done in this database. You got it? Okay. And then you have to give the username and the password to the application so that it can log into the database without any errors. So if you cannot provide a password, or if you give a wrong password, what will happen is when the application is trying to log into this, log into the MySQL and try to do things, MySQL will not allow your application to log in as a user because the credentials are wrong, right? So this is the username and password. This also you have to mention. So don't forget to think much about this. It is about the driver class, okay? And this also you don't have to worry. And here, for the moment, don't worry about this also, okay? So if we add these lines, we are good now to do anything with our database, okay? Only thing is you have to ensure this database name is correct as you have created a database for these application purposes, okay? So I will open my MySQL workbench. Okay, so you see staff management database is there, but no tables are there, right? So okay, I'm here. So actually these are the things I have to create in my application to connect with the database. One thing is having enough or sufficient dependencies or related dependencies in my POM file, and also the correct credentials and settings details in my application.properties file. If both are good, you can write a code that can connect to the database and do database related operations. Okay, that is fine, right? So now what I'm going to do is, what I am supposed to do is I'm supposed to create a repository package, right? Repository. So controller we have, model we have, service we have, and I have to create a repository package. There I need to have a class related to repository class where I'm going to have all the database related code. Okay, so what I will do is I will go and create a new package called repository. Okay, and there I'm going to create a repository class. Okay, so before that I want to tell you a few things. One thing is, for example, when we try to update a database, or when we try to add the data to the database, what we are basically going to do. So let's think about this scenario. Okay, this adding add staff scenario, right? Initially we don't have any data. For example, you are trying to add a staff data and you want to bring it to the database. For the moment we are just adding the staff data and it is going to staff service, and there this add staff method will simply add the data to an array. Okay, but now what we are going to do is we are not going to add the data to an array. Instead, we bring the staff data to the repository layer, and from the repository layer we are going to add the staff data to my database, staff management database. Okay, so if I'm going to add the staff data to my staff management database, basically I need to have a respective table in my database, right? So basically, logically talking, if I'm going to add the staff let's say staff data to my database, I need to have a staff table. Okay, so if I go to my staff class, and I can see it is containing staff name, staff ID, and age. Okay, so all these three values should be populated in my staff table in my database. Okay, so in other words, I need to have a table in my database with the name staff, and it should have 3 columns. One is staff name, other one is staff ID, and other one is age. Okay, staff name is string, staff ID is integer, and age is integer. Okay, so basically I'm going to have a table in my database that is similar to the staff class. Is that clear to you guys? If this is clear, we are good to proceed further. So I will continue this in the next video, guys. Until then, take care, bye. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen that we are supposed to create a table called staff in our database, so so that it can it can store the staff data whenever we post the staff object from the user through Postman, let's say, and whenever we try to retrieve the staff data it can read that data from the table. Okay, so logically talking, our staff object is this in our code, so the table we are going to create as staff also should be the same name, right, and with the same data, staff name, staff ID, and age. And age and staff ID are supposed to be integer, while staff name is supposed to be a string. So in another words, what I can tell is like our table should be similar to this object, right? So what we can do is, so when the user is sending the staff object, how are we going to store the object in our table? And when we are retrieving the data from the table, we have to take the data and we have to assign it to the staff object, and the fields also should be populated correctly. Okay, the column of the table staff name should be assigned to the staff name field of this staff object, and the staff ID should be assigned to staff ID, and age column should be assigned to age of the respective staff object, right? So in another word, you can see the staff object is directly related or mapped or should be mapped to the staff table. Okay, so to do that, what we can do is we can simply annotate the staff class with an annotation called @entity. Okay, so when you do it, okay, for the moment ignore the error. When you do it, okay, when you do it, what should happen is the Spring will understand, okay, the staff object or staff class is going to be a table in a database. So or in another word, the staff class is going to represent a table in a database. So that in the sense, when we are trying to post the staff object, the fields will be converted to a table and table columns and properly inserted into the database, or it will enable us to handle properly the database code that is going to happen after this. And also in the other way around, when you are trying to retrieve data from the database, when you have a staff table with the same fields, the program will automatically assign the data to the staff object, because we have already mentioned this is going to be a table related object, or this is going to be a table in the database. So whenever we let's say whenever we annotate a class with an @entity, that means this is a table in database, or this class is a mapped table in the database, table mapped class in the database. Okay, so that thing we have to understand. So if you click the entity, okay, I'll see. Okay, let's not get into that at the moment. Okay, this is one thing. And also you can see there's an error, right? So it says add ID attribute, As you know, when you create a table in the database, you always should have a primary key that is called ID. Okay, so the program says when we are trying to create a class, an entity class, that means a class that is related to table, we have to mention in the class which is my primary key. Okay, so in my staff class, obviously the staff ID should be the primary key. Okay, the unique one. Staff name or age cannot be primary key. Okay, so I need to annotate the staff ID with the keyword called ID. Okay, so that is good. Okay, so now the system will understand. Okay, this is this is what do you call, this is the primary key, and this is the staff table. And also I want to tell you, let's say in our MySQL workbench, if you go, initially we don't have any tables. We manually created the database. I say that is true, but we didn't create the table. Okay, we didn't create the staff table manually. We don't even have to create the staff table manually. If you run the application, okay, the Spring Boot will create the staff table by itself. Okay, so what it will do is it will get into this database that we mentioned in the application.properties staff management database with the credentials, and it will see, okay, I have an entity class, but I don't have a table in the database for that particular respective class. So the Spring Boot, what it will do is it will create the table in that particular database. Okay, the staff table will be automatically created when you run the application. Okay, so that is how basically it is. Okay, so for the moment this is enough actually to create the table. Now proceed further. So I'm moving this key value on the top. Okay, so as we are good at the moment. Also I'm willing to do one more thing. This getters and setters, right? I have written this get staff name and set staff name. So I want to tell one more thing before that. So also remember we have this constructor, right? Staff constructor, because initially in our code we decided to create staff object manually, right? Because we didn't have any database related thing. But when we move to database and table, we don't need to have any constructors here, because everything will be automatically mapped. When you have a staff object passed inside, it will be automatically mapped to the staff class, and it will become a table in the database, or table column, or table data. So other way around, when you retrieve a data from the database, it will be automatically mapped to the staff object. So you don't have to manually use any constructor in the code. But for the moment, since we are using the constructor, if I delete it, it will give an error. So once we changed our code accordingly, I can remove the constructor. Okay, that is one thing. So when you have a constructor with passing these parameters, and you are trying to make the class as an entity class, you need another empty constructor. Okay, that means when the application is trying to map the data with the database table, okay, or when the application is trying to map a class to the database table, it needs an empty constructor, because application is not going to pass any data like this. Okay, the data, staff data you are passing will be automatically mapped to the fields. Okay, so if you have a constructor defined by yourself, you need to pass an empty constructor. If you don't have a constructor, then there's no problem. Okay, for the moment this constructor is being used in multiple places in my code. So what I'm doing is to avoid this error happening, I'm just creating an empty constructor. Okay, that can be used for the sake of mapping the class to the table. Okay, so what I will do is I will type public staff, and that's all. The error is gone, right? So guys, when I'm done, okay, so when I have refactored my code or changed my code, each and every endpoint step by step for my database scenario, I can remove these constructors, both of the constructors. Okay, so that's for the video, guys. So we will see in the next video how we can create a repository class as well. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen in our entity class how we can create a staff class into an entity class, and how we can create an ID. So, and also I created an empty constructor. So I wanted to change something here, guys. So I had a thought in my mind that this other constructor, okay, the parameter passing constructor is being used in my code. But fortunately, we have removed the usage already, which I forgot to tell you, because even in our controller, the staff object is being passed by the user. So you don't need anything. You just take the staff object and you just add it to your list, right? So you don't, or we don't manually create any staff objects. So in that sense, user passing objects are simply mapped to the staff class, but we are not creating any objects. So this constructor which was existing is not needed or is not used by our code. So I will simply remove that constructor. So as I said, if I don't have that parameter passing constructor, I will not even need that empty constructor, because nowhere in the code I'm going to use this empty constructor by myself. So the sake of adding the empty constructor was this entity related mapping, because I made the class as an entity. So since I removed the parameter passing constructor, I don't need this constructor as well. So what will happen is this entity, because of the entity adding scenario, the system, when it is mapping the staff object, it will by default it will create or use an empty constructor like this. So I don't have to explicitly mention an empty constructor, because I removed the other constructor. This also is not needed. The system will automatically consider and use an empty constructor like this. So I don't have to write a one. So I'm removing it, and there is no error is coming. Okay, so this is one thing. So what I will do is I will just up my application, build my application, and see if the particular class table is being created in my database, right? At the moment we don't have any tables here, right? So normally I'm building my application. So the build is success. Now my application has been successfully built. So I'm going to try run now. Now I will go and refresh this and see a table has been built, right? You see the staff table has been built, created by newly, right? So if you want to check the columns, you can see staff ID, age, and staff name is there. So the same fields that I gave are there. So when you build an application with the class of @entity, okay, the Spring Boot will take care of creating that particular tables in this database. So we are good, right? So if you want to see further details, you can simply click this. Maybe I'm wrong, not this one. Okay, and you see this staff ID is our primary key, because we have added this we have mentioned this staff ID as ID, right? You remember we have annotated the staff ID as ID in our code. That is why it has become primary key here, PK. You got it? Okay, so let me see how I can. Okay, it should be here. Okay, let me see. Okay, so if I check the data, so select all from staff table. If I check the data, select all from staff table, I will see there's no data there, because I didn't add any data. Okay, that is fine. So that means our entities in you yourself have seen when you add the class as an entity, and the database is, the application is understanding, okay, this is a table and I want to create the table in my database. So it goes into the database and create the particular table. You can do it with any number of class, guys. All good. So now what we have to do is, using this class or using this staff object, we are supposed to do that API endpoint operations, right? So let's say, for example, if I'm going to add the staff, think about my add scenario, right? Adding a staff. If I'm post mapping, so if I'm trying to add the staff, basically beyond the staff service methodology, instead of adding the staffs to the staffs list, I have to add that particular staff to the database. So I need to see how I can connect this methodology or this scenario. Instead of doing this, how I can bring this add staff scenario, instead of adding, add staff scenario to the next level, that means database level. How I can let the code to go and do a database addition instead of adding to an array list. You got it? How I can connect it. So you may remember in previous videos we have created a repository package. Okay, so inside the package, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new interface. Okay, let me see where I can create interface. You don't have interface? Okay, cool. Okay, let's see. I'll first give Java class. Okay, here I'm going to create a new interface with the name, let's say, staff repository. So this interface is going to be used to add or receive data to the database, or staff data, or staff data to the database. Okay, so this is not enough. What I have to do is, when I'm doing it, I also have to say extends JPA. Okay, JPA repository, and I have to say I'm going to use the staff object, and my primary ID key is going to be an integer because staff ID is an integer. Okay, I'll import the class. Okay, so here basically what happens is JPA repository is an inbuilt Java or inbuilt repository for Spring Boot to do some database related things, database related queries, MySQL queries, things like that. That means to add the data record to a table, to retrieve the records from the table, for things like that. This JPA repository itself is an interface. So this interface is already internally implemented by some other class. Okay, so you don't have to worry about implementing that class. You simply extend that interface for your purpose, okay, with the specific name of yours, and you are passing your object, what is your table name, or what is your object name, what is the table you are going to get the data from or put the data into, and also the primary key data type of the table, or in another word, the data type of the primary key of the table. Okay, so internally we have few methods implemented within this for this interface, like getting all the data from the table, or putting a particular data into the table, things like that we already have. Okay, we can see those things in details, what are the things we can do, and how we are going to take use of those methods using this repository into our staff service. Where do you have it? Into our staff service class. How we can connect this repository methodologies to our staff service class. And obviously staff service is connected to our staff controller, so that part we don't have any issues. We came from staff controller to staff service, and now we are going to connect the staff service to the staff repository, and staff repository will have internal implementation of queries. So simply we can go for the database updating and deleting. Here we are passing the staff object, so we don't have to worry about the system will itself know which table it is going to play around. So those things we will see in the next video, guys. Until then, take care. Hello everyone. So let's continue from where we left in the last one. So one thing I want to tell you is when you are writing a repository, it's as annotated as a repository. So simply you have to say at repository. That means the Spring will understand, okay, the staff repository is a repository. That means a database layer, and as we know, it extends JPA repository where the table is staff, and the key or primary key will be an integer. That is our staff ID for us. And since the JPA repository is being extended by our staff repository integer, there is an implementation, inbuilt implementation for this repository. Some basic methods such as inserting a data into the database, or deleting a particular data using that primary key, or updating a particular data, things like that. So you don't have to manually write those basic queries unless you need an explicit query that is a customized query. So now let's see how we can use this particular repository into our code so that we can basically update our database. So now if I go to the database and see the table, staff table, if there is any data, I can see there is no data there, right? So the data, that the table is basically empty. There is no data inside the table. So what I will do is I will, as we all know, this repository layer should come after a service layer. So we start from the controller layer and we go to service, and the service should call the repository layer and update the database basically. So what I will do is I'm going to use the repository layer in the service layer. So what I will do is I will go to my service class, and I need to create the repository object and call the respective method for let's say for each and every scenarios, like adding, updating, and deleting. So first, let's think about adding a data to this scenario, to this staff table from our endpoint. So for the moment, what happens is when you're adding a new staff, it is updating our staff array, right? Staffs array. That's what happening. So now what I want to do is, in this particular thread or in this particular code flow, I want to update in a way that when you're adding a staff from our endpoint, it should update the data. It should add a new staff data into my table, staff table. Instead of this list, I need to add it to my staff table. Why I want to do this is, if I add it into the staff table, it will be here forever. It will not be deleted. If I add it into the list, it will be temporary, and when I restart the application, it will be gone, right? So what I will do is, I will have to, so if I want to add it into the staffs table, I need the repository layer, right? So what I have to do is, I have to create the connect the repository class to this staff service class. So for that, what I have to do is, I have to create a new repository object, and I simply have to call a method, an inbuilt method to insert or to add a new staff data to or new staff data row to the existing table, right? So how we can do it is, normally when we create a new object like this, but in Spring injection. So let's not dive into this topic now because this is a separate topic. We will learn about it later. So for now, just see how this can be done. So instead of creating new repository object, because repository itself is an interface, right? So you can't create a new object without giving a implementation of the interface, right? So what we have to basically do is, we have to do something called dependency. So let's just see what I'm doing, so that you will try to catch up. Okay, so first what I will do is, I will declare a new variable, let's say private new staff service, and I will this particular variable, okay. So I will say staff repository. So I will say this dot staff repository. So you know these things is equal to staff repository. That means the one I am passing here. And also I should annotate it with an annotation at auto-wired. Okay, so now you know two new things. One is an annotation called auto-wired, and the other and another thing called dependency injection. So here what actually happens is, this may be a little confusing, but basically what actually happens is the Spring it will find because we know this staff repository is an extension of JPA repository, and there are inbuilt implementations for this JPA repository. So when you extend the staff repository from the JPA repository, and when you say okay at auto-word, and when you write this particular class constructor, and you are passing a new staff repository here, staff repository object or staff repository reference here, and you are saying auto-wired, and you are assigning that staff repository to this staff repository, right? So that is what you are doing in the line number 18. When you are doing it, what Spring will do is, Spring will find an implementation of the staff repository, that is an inbuilt implementation. Spring will find it, and it will assign it to this staff repository object. So there is something called beans, and Spring will find the respective bean and assign it to staff repository. Those things you don't need now. But only one thing, just remember what I said is, Spring will automatically find it from its inbuilt implementation and assign it to our staff repository. So this scenario is kind of called, so this is implemented by also this at auto-wired also is important here. So this scenario is let's say implemented by at auto-wired as well. So when you mention at auto-wired, it makes it easy to Spring to do this implementation. So what I said, the functionality. So basically your staff repository will be created and ready to be used by the staff service. Okay, so this is how we implement or we achieve dependency injection. But now don't get much into this, just know this is how you have to do it. Okay, so there's another problem. What it is we have to do the same to the staff service as well. Okay, so why is it why we have to do it is I will tell you. Hello everyone, so we stopped here from the last video. So here also the problem is now since we changed this our staff service class. Okay, and here you can see let me save it so that okay, staff service class, and we use this dependency injection scenario, and yeah, where we were, okay, dependency injection scenario where we create a constructor of the staff service by passing a staff repository. So since we have created a constructor here, the problem is the staff controller is going to give you an error because we don't have an empty constructor here. Our constructor always needs a staff repository to be passed inside it, because we explicitly mentioned it here for our scenario in the previous video. So we have to pass a staff repository if you have to create a staff service object. The problem is you don't want to create a staff repository manually because it is an interface, and we let the Spring do the work for us. It will find an implementation of the staff repository and it should pass it by itself. So the scenario is like we start from the controller going to service and repository. So this controller is in the thread, in the first step of the thread. So the change we made in the staff service is going to affect our controller, obviously. So what we have to do is we have to use the same flow, same methodology, same dependency injection here for the staff service as well. Okay, so what I will do is I will comment this line first, and I will create the same scenario for that. So for that, what I will do is I will say private. I will declare a new staff service here first, like how I did in the staff service class. So staff service, and I will use the dependency injection. How I will do is I will create a new staff controller constructor. I'm sorry, and I will pass the staff service inside this. I will pass a new staff service inside this. Okay, so I will say staff service like how I did in the previous video, staff service, and I will simply say this dot staff service is staff service. So that means this particular staff service is being assigned to our internal variable staff service. So why I'm doing this is if I have to manually create a new staff service object, the problem is I have to I have to use this constructor, and I have to pass a staff repository. So if I want to pass a staff repository, I have to create a staff repository, but unfortunately staff repository is an interface, so I have to give an implementation within that. So when you start to give an implementation, then you will get into more complexities. You are not going to take advantage of Spring. So since Spring will take care of this implementation and assigning, creating this repository, using this repository implementation and finding a repository object and assign it to our local repository, wherever you are supposed to create any object in this same thread, in this same track, like how this staff service is connected to the controller, there also you have to use the same approach. Okay, you cannot simply create a new object, because if you have to create a new staff service object, you have to create a new staff repository that you cannot do now. So what you do is you take the same approach here as well, the dependency injection. So I forgot to annotate it with auto wired. Now I have annotated with that. So what do you do is you just declare a staff service. Even though it is a class, you declare it and you just pass it as using the dependency injection methodology. You create a new staff controller, you create a staff controller constructor and passing a staff service as a parameter, and you assign the staff service to this local variable staff service. So in this scenario, what Spring does is it first goes to the staff service class and it will find, okay, I need to create a repository. So it will find an implementation of a staff repository object, staff repository interface, and it will inbuilt implementation. It will assign it to our local staff repository using this constructor. So once it assigned, now it has a new staff service object, fresh one. So then it will go to the staff controller and pass that particular object from its storage and assign it to the local variable of the staff service. So now our staff service is created and ready to be used. So you don't need these new scenarios. So this is the benefit of using this Spring. This is called dependency injection. So we may study about these things later. For the moment, you should know how to do this. Okay, so you simply do this thing using AutoWire here, so that you can use the staff repository class. And also, since this scenario has been implemented in this thread, wherever you are going to use staff service, you have to use the same approach. So the staff service is being used in the staff controller. So again, you are going to use the same dependency injection approach here as well. So it is somewhat similar to successfully creating a new staff service object. And here it is somewhat similar to successfully creating a new staff repository. So that's all it is. So once you have created those things, that means you are good to go forward. So I will just mention the keyword here for your understanding. I will mention it as dependency injection. And here also I will mention show. So now our application is good. So now what I will do is I'm going to use the staff repository methodologies for my add scenario. So when I'm trying to add a new staff record to my table, to the table. So this is add staff. I'm going to add the staff, new staff. So we will see that in the hello everyone. So we actually left from here from the last video. So this add staff scenario. So what I was trying to do is I'm trying to add a new staff or new staff record to my database using this insert endpoint now. So I'm going to use Postman for this scenario, and from that I'm going to pass a new staff object and see if I can add a new staff successfully into my database. So I will go here and I will just click that staff, and here you can see at the moment I am adding the new staff to my staffs list. Okay, staffs is none other than an existing list. So here what I have to do is I have to change it, because now I want to add it into a database. So for that only I have created all these repository businesses. So using my repository I want to add it. So what I want to do is I'm going to use an inbuilt method from my staff repository. So I will call the staff repository object, and I will use a method called inbuilt implemented method called save. That method can be used to save a new entity or new row or new data into the existing database table. So you can see this here, dot save. So this is an inbuilt method and it will add a new staff into our database. So here using the save method, I will pass my staff object into this save method. As soon as I do it, it will be able to this database repository will be able to use some queries and save that particular staff or insert the particular staff into my database table. So in other words, if you go to this particular staff repository, you will see this staff repository is none other than an interface that is extending JPA repository, and the JPA repository is basically taking staff object, okay, a staff table, and also an integer that is none other than the primary key of the staff table, that is our staff ID. So when you pass a staff object inside the save method of the staff repository, basically the JPA repository implementation has a save method somewhere, and Spring will use that save method where we can pass the staff as an entity, where our primary key will be the integer staff ID. So that is what actually happening. So there are a number of inbuilt methods that can be used for every purposes. So we are using save method where we are simply going to input the data or add the data or insert the data into that particular table. So this is the benefit of it. You don't have to write a single query. Okay, so I'll go to the staff service and go to the place where I changed the code. So I'm using the staff repository.save method and passing my staff object, so that this will be successfully saved using this inbuilt method implementations. Okay, so you don't have to write any queries. Okay, so let's not get into that deeply, and let's stop it here. So now what I have changed is one single line change. Simply changed the list adding scenario to the database adding scenario, and the flow will start like this. So we will hit this particular endpoint, and we will pass a staff data or staff object, and we'll call this add staff with that object, and that add staff will call the repository and try to save the particular staff object into the database. Okay, I will stop the application and build and run again since I made a small change now. So my application is now successfully built and I'm going to run it. So now it's up and running, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to open my Postman, and you see this is the particular endpoint insert. So using this URL, I'm going to hit this insert endpoint where my code flow is. This is in this flow only I have made all the changes. I'm going to store the data in the database using this insert endpoint, right? So I'm going to call the endpoint insert, and I'm going to add this data, right? So I'm going to add Mary staff ID 3355 and age 25. This is my staff record. So I'm going to add this particular record to my database by calling this endpoint. So before that, I want to show you, as you know, since we added this repository, the system knows where to save the data, right? Because we have given all the details in the application.properties. So what is the database, and the system already has created the table. I will first go to this MySQL and show you. So in the staff management database, it has created a table already staff, because we have already mentioned those things in my code. The staff object with the annotation as entity and things like that, right? You have noted all those things. So first I will check the staff table whether there is any data here. So you see there is no data, right? It's an empty table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that endpoint with this particular data and see whether the database has been, the table has been got updated with this data. I will click send, and I'm getting a 200 OK success response. So how I will check whether this has been successful. I will go to my database and run this query again. I will click this, it will run the query, and you see we have a new data here, Mary, age 25 and ID 3335. So the same data I passed here, Mary, age 25, ID 3335, isn't it? So I will add one more data. Let's say Anne, ID 333 is 8 maybe, and age 28. Okay, I'm going to again hit the database, hit the call endpoint, and see whether the database is again updated with the new data. So now again I'm getting a 200 OK. So I will go to the database and I will again run this query and see. See, now the Anne has also been added into my table. So that means Anne, age 28 and the staff ID, the same data I passed in the Postman, has been successfully added into the table. So that means my post endpoint is working as expected, and we are able to add the new data to the table using our repository.save method. That means our adding scenario is successful until the database layer. I will catch you up in the next video, guys. Hello everyone. So in the last video we have seen how we can create a new record, how we can add a new staff into the database, and we know now how to test it by checking our database where the new staff record has been added into our staff table. So in this video we will see how we can delete a database entry, or how we can delete a new delete an existing staff using the staff ID, because we have already written a similar code using this particular endpoint, using a delete endpoint by passing the staff ID as a path variable, and we simply go to the staff service and we use the delete staff method in the staff service. So the delete staff method will take the staff ID and it will loop the staff's list, and it will find the particular staff list staff object with the particular staff ID, and it will remove it. So now what we have to do is, instead of removing from the list, we are now going to delete it from the database, because we have added it to the database in the previous video. Now we are going to delete it from the database. So for the moment what I will do is I will comment out this code, because I'm not going to remove it from this what do you call my bad, I'm not going to remove from this list. Instead I'm going to remove it from the staff table. So for that I'm going to use the staff repository, right, that I have created in this code as in this class as a variable, right? So I will call the staff repository, and I'm going to call a method. Which method I'm going to call is, I'm going to pass an ID, right? The staff ID is my primary key in the table that I have mentioned when I created the table. So I'm going to delete using the staff ID because there is a flow, right? Even if when I'm deleting it from the staff's list, I'm using the staff ID and I'm finding the particular object with the particular staff ID and I'm removing the object. The same way, I'm going to remove that record from the database using the staff ID. That is my primary key. So there is a method in the repository or JPA repository that is being extended by the staff repository called delete by ID. Okay, that will take an ID and that ID should be the primary key. So using that ID, it will remove that, it will find the primary key and column, and it will check for the particular ID value, and it will delete the record of that particular primary key from the table, right? So I will call the delete by ID method, and I will simply has to pass the staff ID inside that. So it's very easy. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to write any query. So the system, the inbuilt query will be, inbuilt method will have that respective query. And to your knowledge, once again, if you go to the staff repository, you will see the JPA repository is being extended by the staff repository. For that, we have inbuilt implementation. Spring knows what to do, and it will take the staff table and it will take the integer as a primary key. That integer, that primary key, is none other than the staff ID we are passing inside this delete by ID method. So it will simply get the staff ID. It will know it is the primary key. The delete by ID method knows it is the primary key, and it will simply delete the particular record using that staff ID primary key from the table. And one more thing I want to tell is, if you go to the staff table, staff object, you can see we have mentioned our ID is staff ID, right? In the staff object, staff model, the staff entity. So when the staff table or staff entity is being created in the database, the staff ID has been considered as the primary key because we mentioned it as ID. So when we try to delete by ID, this staff ID will be considered. Okay, you got it. So the primary key will be considered and the particular record will be deleted from the database. So this is a one-line change that I have made. All I have to do is I have to go where this delete staff is being called. That is none other than inside the staff controller. So delete staff is being called here, and the staff ID is being passed from the path variable, right? So I want to hit this endpoint, delete staff ID endpoint, with the staff ID and try to see the particular record has been deleted from the database instead of any list. Okay, so first I will go to the database and I will see my existing data. So I can see there are two staffs. One is Mary, one is Anne, one is 3335 and one is 3338. So what I will do is I will try to delete Anne using my delete endpoint 3338. Okay, and see whether it works or not, because now I have changed the code flow to delete the data from the database instead of the list. So now it is supposed to work. So what I will do is I will open my endpoint. I will find my delete endpoint here that I used earlier, and I'm going to delete the 3338, right? Yeah, 3338 is already there. So I'm trying to delete this particular ID 3338. So I will again double check. So I'm going to delete Anne, right? So what I will do is first I will build my application and run. So ambient clean install will build it. Okay, so the application build is success. Now I will run it. So it's up and running. So now what I'm going to do is I see, okay, Anne is there. So, and I want to delete Anne from this existing database. Number 3338. So 3338 is being passed as a path parameter, and I'm going to call it now. Okay, I have hit the endpoint. Now it is saying a success response 200. So what I will do is I will go to my database and I will see, I will check all the existing data so that I can see whether the Anne has been deleted or not. So you can see now Anne has been gone right from the table. Only we have Mary. So we have successfully deleted Anne. So let's try to delete Mary as well and see whether it is working. So if I want to delete Mary, I want to get her staff ID, right? It is 3335. So I will go to my Postman and I will change the ID as 3335 and I will see whether I can delete her. So it is also success response. So I will go to the database and I will again check the existing data. So now see, there is no data available. That means Mary also has been successfully deleted. So that in another word means our delete endpoint is also working successfully with the database interaction. We are able to delete the data from the database using our delete endpoint. Hello everyone. So we have seen how we can add a new staff into our database using insert endpoint, and how we can delete an existing staff using our staff ID from the database table. So basically we have seen both of these things. So now let's see how we can update an existing staff using in the database. For now, even though we update it in the list. So here we have that endpoint, right? What we were normally doing is we use that update endpoint and we pass a staff object as our request body, and that object is being updated using the staff ID, right? Isn't it? So what we do is in the staff service, we call the update staff method. Let me go there. And in the update staff method, we take the staff, and from this staff's list, we just take each and every staff and we check whose staff ID is matching this staff ID, the staff's object staff ID. And when we find this particular staff, responsible staff using this ID, we update their name and age from this from the value we are getting as a parameter, right? So that is how we do it. So if I go to Postman, this update method, that is the put method, what we do is I call the update method and I pass some data. Okay, what they do is they take we check the staff ID and we find the ID and we update the incoming name and age regardless of what was already existing for the staff ID. So in other words, for the particular staff ID, we are changing the name and age, or either name and age or both. Okay, so this scenario, how we can do in the database is, I will go first here and I will simply comment out this existing one because this is updating the list instead of the database. I will comment this out first, and what I will do is, for this scenario, I can use the same save method from the repository. Why? Because if I call the staff, because if I try to insert a data in using the save method, we did it in that staff method, right? In the line number 39, it was inserting a data, right? So while inserting it inbuilt in the inbuilt implementation, what it does is it will check the primary key. Okay, if the primary key is not, that means our staff ID, right? It is not there, it will create a new record and add the record in the table. If the primary key is already there, for example, you are sending the key staff ID as 10, and if the 10 has a record already, what it will does is, this save method does is, it will update the other field of the particular record. Okay, so basically the same scenario is our update scenario, right? So basically when you call the same method, it will either insert or update depending on the data. So if the database key is already existing, it will update. If it is not existing, it will simply create a new record. Okay, so here we are creating the record. Here in the update scenario, we are going to send a staff ID that is already existing. So we will call the same method where we know it is going to update the existing data. Okay, so what I will do is I will say staff repository dot save, and I will pass the staff, and I know I'm going to pass an existing staff ID, staff with the I'm going to pass a staff with an existing ID, and I know it is going to update the data. Okay, so it is that simple. You don't need a separate method. Okay, so I will store it, and you know this update staff method is being called inside our controller, where new staff object is coming, where a staff object is coming with the update URL endpoint. Okay, so first what I will do is I will simply up and run this, simply build the application first. That is being built now. So as soon as it is being built, I will run it. So now it is being built. Let me see. Okay, it's successfully built. Now I will run the application and see whether it can be running. Yeah, so it is it is up and running now. Okay, and now it is up and running. So what I will do is I will go to my database and check what is the data I have now. So I have one data already existing, staff ID 3338, name Anne, and age 28. What I will do is I will try to update it. Okay, what I will do is for the same staff ID I will give a new name and age. Okay, so first I will go to my update endpoint, that is here, and I will use the same staff ID 3338. I will change the name as, let's say, Robert. I will give a new name Robert, and let's say age 30. So okay, this is the update endpoint with the same staff ID of existing ID and the new name Robert and age 30. What is the existing one? Staff ID same 3338, name Anne, and age 28, right? So now what I'm going to do is calling the update endpoint with the same staff ID with a different age and different name. And I know when I call the repository.save method, it is going to come and check, okay, this staff ID is existing. It is going to update the other fields. If it is not existing, it will add it as a new record, right? That is its functionality. So what I will do is I'm calling this update endpoint in my controller and with the new name and the new age for the same staff ID. So now the Anne is supposed to be changing to the new age and new name, right? So I will hit the endpoint and it is 200 success. I'll come to my database. I will implement the query now and see what happens. So you can see staff ID is still same and the age is now 30 and staff name is Robert. It has been updated, right? You see Robert 33838 and age 30. So for your clarity, what I will do is I will insert a new data using post method with the new ID and I will update it. Okay, so I will add 3339 with the new name, let's say John, and let's say age 25 first. Okay, so I'm inserting the data now using the insert endpoint and I will update it later. I have inserted it, so 200 is fine. So there's my database. So you see we have John, age 25 with the ID 3339. So now what I will do is with the same ID, I'm going to change the name and the age. Okay, so I will go to my Postman and now I will move to the put endpoint, update endpoint, and I will change the ID to the 3339. That is John's ID. Is that correct? Yeah, 3339. And I will change the name from John to, let's say, Mary. And I'll put the age from 25 to, let's say, 29. Okay, not 3029 but 29. Okay, now I'm going to update this particular ID to Mary and age 29. So I will hit it 200. Okay, I'll go to my database and I will run this query and see now 3339 is now not John, it is Mary and age 29. Okay guys, so now we are successfully able to update the database using our endpoint. So now we can do let's say we can insert a new data, we can delete an existing data, and we can even update the data. Okay. Hello everyone, so we have already seen how we can add the staff to an existing database using our repository method, how we can delete an existing staff record from the database using the staff ID, and how we can also update the staff record using our staff repository methods. The only thing we didn't see is how we can get the existing staffs from the database, how we can read it and see in our endpoint, right, in our response. So in our controller we had a method for that. We have a method called get staffs. That method will simply call that this is the endpoint URL, and that method will simply return your list of staffs, and it will call a method from the service that is get staffs method. So if you go to the service and see the get staffs method, it will simply return staffs. What is staff? It is a list of staffs. So it will simply return an existing internal list staffs where earlier we were adding and removing and updating the staffs. So now what we have to do is we don't have to do anything with this internal list, but we have to return the data from the database, right? Existing all the staff details or staff records as a list we have to return, or in other words, we have to return the existing staff records from the database instead of the internal list. So what we can do is here, what is the method we, as usual, what is the method we have it for from this repository, right? That is the question, right? So in the repository we have a method for this as well. That means to get all the data from this database. In another word, select all from staff, right? Select all from the staff table, right? That is the query, right? So there is a method for that in this repository. So for the moment I will comment the existing line and I will replace it with the repository method. So I'm going to return the data, right, from the table. So for that I have the staff repository, and there's a method from the staff repository called find all. Okay, so this method will simply implement the query select all from that particular table, right, whatever the staff table. So the find all method will simply return all the data, right, nothing but that. So the staff repository will go to this staff table because it is extending the JPA repository by passing the staff object and also the parameter like primary key. So it knows it has to find from the staff table, and it will find all the record from the staff table, and it will simply, you can see the return value, it will simply return a list of staff, right? You can see. So our method also returning a list of staff. So in another word, sorry, my cursor is playing with me. A method also returning a list of staff. So in other words, this repository will find all the records from this database table, and it will return us all the records as a list one after another. So it is that simple, right? So I simply replace this line with this method. So now we don't retrieve from the internal list. Instead of that, we are retrieving the data from the database table itself, okay, using the find all method. So I will build the application now and run it to see if it is working or not. So my application is being built. Okay, so it has been successfully built now. So what I will do is I will run it now. So it is being run now. So it is started. So first I will go to my database and see the existing data, right? Select all from staff. So actually the same scenario is going to happen. I'm going to get all the data from the existing table, right? Select and get. So you see we have two data, staff ID 3338, 3339, name Robert, age 30, and name Mary, and age 29. So I need to get all these two data in my endpoint, isn't it? So now if I go to my endpoint, before that, like, okay, let's say if I go to my endpoint, I will call these staffs, this get staff, and it will go to the staff service get staff method. That is actually here, and from there it is going to call the repository find all method, where it is going to read this table and return these two data, right? Basically that is what is going to happen. So I will open my Postman, and I have that get pen endpoint here. That is called staffs. Okay, so that is a URL. So I'm clicking send, and it's 200 okay, and you can see the data here, right? We have two records. One is 3338 Robert, age 30, and the other one is 3339 Mary, and age 29. If you want to verify, you go to database and you run the query, select all query, and you see two data, 3338 Robert, age 30, and 3339 Mary, and age 29. So guys, now you know, like, we can successfully even do get as well. That means get all the staffs. So now we have done addition, add, and updating. That means update, insert, update, and deleting, delete, and also get. Okay, so that means all the CRUD operations we have done with the database. So what I will do is, we are good now. What I will do is I will clean the code, because I don't need the list related things now, because we are done with that. So I will simply remove these unnecessary code, and I will do a code refactoring by removing the code and make the code more small, because we don't need all these things, right? All these code and all, right? I mean this kind of commented code. I will do these things in the upcoming videos, and we will see what we can do further. But basically Now you know completely, you know how you can add, update, delete, and get the data from the database using your API endpoint properly with the controller, service, and repository layer without any issues. Okay guys, so I will meet you in